The internet had been loud the past 2 months. Three big accounts woke up at once. First, Bai Luan's lifestyle feed started posting late-night food photos every evening, tempting fans and ruining countless diets. Second, a game developer dropped 4 hit titles back-to-back, each a massive success and each selling for only 1 credit. Third, Robin released 3 new songs that got everyone talking. Reporters tried to capture the mood. A BL game fan gushed on camera. "BL, you're my god. It's so fun. I live for games like Dead Cells." Another interviewee, calmer at first, turned into an evangelist. "This Stardew Valley BL version costs 1 credit. Anyone who criticizes Stardew Valley, I will fight you. If you don't play it, leave." A third fan erupted when asked about Terraria. "Why haven't you played Terraria?" The reporter backed away and muttered, "I'll play it when I get back," then fled as another voice shouted behind him, "Everyone go play Terraria. If you haven't, what's wrong with you? Someone please knock me out and erase my memory so I can play it again." Meanwhile, Robin's 3 songs, Virtual What Keeps You Here and If Love Forgot, sent the music fandom into a frenzy. Virtual lured everyone in. The other 2 left fans in pieces. "Don't stop after Virtual. Go straight to the last 2, people warned. Fan animators promised to force-feed the lyrics until listeners understood. Praise poured in. Robin's voice was sweet and devastating. The songs showed versatility and power. Fan-made tributes and hot takes filled every corner of the net. None of it moved Bai Luan much. This wasn't his first stir. Fame cycles bored him. The only thing that entertained him more than the internet buzz was the memory of taunting Silver Wolf after the game's release, especially when she played all 4 titles and then sheepishly apologized for saying his talent was gone, asking, "Can you make more like this?" He heard the figurative abacus click from the Stellaron hunter's hideout and grinned. His answer, delivered with amusement, "Nope, I'm not doing the next batch." In truth, the 4 hits were less than 1% realized within the Honkai, Star Rail world. Mostly clever borrowings of Terraria's systems, Minecraft mods and mechanics, DLC ideas for Dead Cells, and Stardew Valley's relaxed daily loop. People could study and play these games for a lifetime without running out of things to do. And the Robin collaboration? That had been pure fun. Her 3 songs were stuck in his head and everywhere he turned. The lifestyle account, though, caused a little trouble. Sharp-eyed researchers at Heita space station had spotted familiar items in the kitchen background and started trying to unmask him. He didn't panic. As soon as they sniffed a lead, he slipped into the role of prophet, claiming to be the first to spot clues and corralling the enthusiastic sleuths into a chat group. He led them with plausible-sounding but ultimately meaningless major clues, watching them analyze, argue, and dig themselves into excited dead ends. He enjoyed every minute of steering them further from the truth. After his jog around the space station, a route he kept for self-discipline, Bai Luan passed familiar scenes. Arlen and Peppy tossing an electronic frisbee, Inspiration Shroom chatting with a researcher, and Shu surrounded by a group of engineers. Sentient machines were interesting, but man-made machines approaching true sentience were a different league. New recruits were always brought to meet the pinnacle of the team's work. It was a kind of ritual to introduce them to creations they could talk to and learn from. Then he saw the Astral Express docked at Heita's platform. He did a double take, as if someone had hit rewind. The hatch slid open and the crew disembarked. March 7th, stretching with pink hair like cherry blossoms, Dan Heng with his calm, expressionless face, Welt Yang, steady and experienced in glasses, and Himeko, red-haired and composed. Heita herself stood nearby, unruffled, and greeted Himeko like an old acquaintance. Bai Luan ran over, questions racing. Himeko and Heita were in mid-conversation. "These are everything you need to find for this commission," Himeko said. "Understood. As usual, the train will stop here for a bit to resupply," Heita replied. "You should talk to Asta about these things. Don't bother me. I'm not handling this anymore." "Asta?" Heita glanced toward the platform just as Bai Luan arrived. The puppet turned and smiled. "You've come at just the right time." She pointed at Bai Luan. "Let me introduce you. This is Bai Luan, the former acting station master and my assistant." "Wait, I've never seen him before," Himeko said. "That's because he was the unlucky fellow trapped in the time stream," Heita added. "We rescued him." Bai Luan, a little embarrassed but used to this kind of chaos, stepped forward. The Astral Express crew looked at him, and for a moment he didn't know what to say. The Heita puppet waved off the introductions. "You all introduce yourselves," she instructed the Express crew, then turned to Bai Luan. "They'll be staying here a while. You'll be their guide. Help them pass the time at Heita Space Station. It's in your hands. Bye." With that, the puppet's expression returned to neutral, and she went about her duties. Bai Luan, left holding responsibility yet again, managed a wry smile. Himeko, poised and polite, stepped forward. "Hello, nice to meet you," she said. "I'm Himeko, navigator of the Astral Express. Just call me Himeko." I catch myself. My name is Bai Luan. Those over there are Welt Yang, March 7th, and Dan Heng. They're all members of the Trailblaze crew, and they're currently discussing their upcoming plans. All right, enough introductions. I've heard a bit about what you've done. I know more about you than you might think. Oh, is that so? Good to conserve breath. The Express needs resupplying, and I'll take this chance to meet the new acting station master. Himeko methodically cleared things up and made her arrangements. So tell me where I can find Asta. I'm not sure where Asta is right now. Bai Luan took out his phone. How about this? Let's add each other as friends, and I'll recommend Asta to you. That would be best. Himeko requests to add you as a friend. You have added Himeko as a friend. You recommended Asta to Himeko. Asta accepted the friend request almost instantly. She picked up the situation from Himeko and sent her location. When Himeko saw it, she smiled and looked at Bai Luan. "I've got the location. My business here is done." As for the other Trailblaze members, you don't need to worry about Welt Yang. He recently heard about a high-tech robot at Heita Station and is dying to see it. He's going to go look for it. I know where it is. Welt Yang, who had been listening in, suddenly spoke up. "Then I'll trouble you." Bai Luan casually told him the cabin where Shu was. "Thank you," Welt Yang said and set off with quick, eager steps. He was really curious what a high-tech robot looked like. "It's rare to see him so excited," Himeko observed. "I hope the result satisfies him." If Shu didn't, Bai Luan thought, he could always show him his own mech. Himeko glanced at March 7th and Dan Heng as they walked over and asked with a smile, "How did your discussion go? Have you decided what you'll be doing for the next while?" Dan Heng nodded. "March 7th wants to find the true identity behind the Yimu account." "You mean the account that started over 900 years ago, resurfaced recently, and began posting again?" "Exactly. That's him." Himeko's eyes flicked. The timing felt like too much of a coincidence. Over 900 years ago, the assistant she just pulled out of the time-space turbulence. Could it be? She turned toward Bai Luan. He met her look and shrugged, as if admitting it by default. Yimu was the name of his personal account. March 7th puffed up with righteous indignation. "The culprit who uploads food videos in the middle of the night every day, making my stomach growl. He's the reason I'm gaining weight." She worriedly pinched her flat stomach as if a phantom layer of fat had appeared. Dan Heng dryly added, "And then what?" "Then." March 7th froze, stroking her chin as if trying to think of an actual plan. Dan Heng rubbed his temples. This was another spur-of-the-moment idea without a plan. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. "I got it! Make him cook all the dishes from the videos for me. Consider it compensation for emotional damages." She looked pleased with her own ingenuity. Dan Heng opened his mouth to point out that would only make her gain more weight, but after a beat, he chose silence. Himeko chuckled, glanced at Bai Luan, and said, "That sounds exactly like Little March." Dan Heng noticed Bai Luan then. "Who is this?" "Dan Heng, March 7th. My name is Bai Luan." He nodded once. "Consider me your temporary guide while you're at the space station." "Wow!" March 7th exclaimed and turned to Dan Heng. "We didn't have a guide last time. It seems we come so often, the station assigned us one." "Little March," Himeko started, trying not to laugh. "Bai Luan is Miss Heita's assistant. He's just temporarily acting as our guide." "Eh? Is that so?" March 7th scratched her head. "My apologies," Dan Heng added. "My friend means no harm. She's usually like this." "Why do you make it sound like I'm usually silly?" March 7th protested, blinking accusingly. Dan Heng shifted his gaze to avoid those pink, accusatory eyes. Even without Star Dome and lacking the full Express trio, the vibe was unmistakable. Bai Luan offered a faint smile. If you want to investigate Yimu, I have ways to find him directly. Eh? Really? His appearance and identity have always been a mystery. After all, I used to be the station master here. It's only natural I know secrets others don't. Station? Station master? March 7th's surprise was genuine. She hadn't expected Bai Luan to have held such a high position. Wait, hadn't Himeko just called him Herta's assistant? Assistant to a genius society member and formerly station master. Impressive. I'm sorry for mistaking you for a guide. Bai Luan waved it off. It's fine. I'm about your age. Don't be so formal. Those achievements aren't much. I even envy you for being nameless. March 7th fidgeted, looking like she wanted to ask something, but was unsure. Bai Luan encouraged her. If you have anything to ask, just ask. That's great. I want to ask, does Herta Station pay well? You're so young and already retired? Even Bai Luan couldn't help a soft laugh at March 7th's unique logic. Seeing his pause, she worried, did I say something wrong? No, he smiled. It's just that I never thought of it as retirement. My situation doesn't really count. Not retirement? March 7th leaned in, gossip-hungry. Then why aren't you station master anymore? Because I found a successor. Just as Ms. Herta passed the station to me, I passed it on to the current station master, Asta. March 7th blinked, then exclaimed, Then you really are Miss Herta's assistant. Your style is exactly the same. Himeko, seeing the three getting along, smiled and said, Since that's the case, let Bai Luan take you to investigate Yimu. He should know the station better than we do. I still need to resupply the express, so I won't be joining you. Have a pleasant time. Himeko gave Bai Luan a meaningful look as she left. The answer to her riddle sat right in front of her. She'd guessed the true identity of Yimu, but chose not to expose him. She waved them off. Bai Luan looked at March 7th's expectant, sparkling eyes and at Dan Heng, who, though silent, clearly condoned the plan. He began to ponder. How should I lead these two to find myself? They'll never find me. They'll never find me. In the kitchen of Herta Space Station, March 7th examined the array of cookware. It really is exactly like the kitchen in the video. I remember this pot. Yimu used it when he cooked. His fried rice made my mouth water. Dan Heng pulled up Yimu's video on his phone and played it. Inspiration Shroom's voice came from the screen, reading the script Bai Luan had written. It had taken a lot of editing to remove Inspiration Shroom's little shroom tick. Shu had helped with that. In the cozy, detective-like atmosphere Bai Luan had set, he adopted a solemn, mastermind tone. He never shows his face, Bai Luan said. The camera angles focus on ingredients. Mostly you only see his hands. Now that you mention it, that's true, March 7th said. Yimu's hands are very pretty. You can't tell if they belong to a man or a woman. Bai Luan added, adopting an admiring voice. From the voice, Yimu must be a very skilled woman. It's ethereal and pleasant. I think she's a young girl. Dan Heng, standing nearby, quipped, a young girl who's over 900 years old? March 7th agreed without missing a beat. He's not wrong. A beautiful girl is a beautiful girl. It doesn't matter how old she is. Excellent. The first step in the misunderstanding had been planted. In a place none of them could see, Bai Luan let a small, knowing smile slip across his face. Assuming Yimu is really a young girl, Dan Heng offered, and her voice hasn't changed in 900 years, could she be from Shanzhou? Her dessert series definitely has a Shanzhou vibe, Bai Luan said. A long lifespan would fit too. Are there any Shanzhou researchers on the space station? March 7th asked. Not that I know of, Bai Luan replied. Then are there any researchers who've been on Herta for several hundred years? Dan Heng tried another angle. Bai Luan's smile tightened, careful. There aren't any researchers who have been here continuously for hundreds of years. Dan Heng fell silent, thinking. Did you two notice? In Yimu's early videos, the setting wasn't the space station. I know, the early ones were filmed in the botanical garden, all those weird plants. March 7th said, delighted. Bai Luan nodded as if satisfied. There's no place like that on the space station, so my guess is Yimu only arrived recently. The 900-year gap was probably spent traveling the galaxy and learning to cook. That would explain why the recipes are so varied and the technique so refined. Oh, that makes sense, March 7th exclaimed. Surprised, she asked Bai Luan, I didn't expect you to know so much about Yimu. Are you a fan? No, I'm not a fan, Bai Luan said smoothly. I am him, he thought, but he wouldn't say that aloud. There are people on the station, curious researchers like March 7th, who put together a group to share information about Yi Mu. I happen to be in that group. There's a group? Can you add me? Let's all find her. March 7th begged. There are requirements to join, Bai Luan said. At minimum, you need to be a researcher. Ah, that's too bad. I'm in the group, though. I'll share anything new I learn. Yay, March 7th cheered. Dan Heng asked, Is there anything useful in the group right now? That's everything so far. I'll tell you if anything comes up. A flicker of disappointment crossed March 7th's face. I guess we'll just have to do it ourselves. Dan Heng glanced toward the corner of the kitchen. Are there cameras here? Everyone checked the surveillance footage. There were no useful clues. They had indeed checked the cameras. The footage showed Bai Luan cooking in this kitchen, but the misdirection had led everyone to assume the cook was female, so no one paid close attention. Bai Luan always chose a spot away from the cameras. The group watched the tapes at high speed, making it even harder to see what he was actually making. And the timestamps between when the Yimu account uploaded and when Bai Luan cooked didn't match up, reducing the value of the footage even more. Now all we can do is search the station by voice and gender, Bai Luan said. I have to admit, Yimu's been good at hiding. Everyone in the group is using this clumsy method to find him. Dan Heng then spoke. Maybe the voice in the videos isn't Yimu's natural voice. Bai Luan looked at him with the expression of someone who always found the blind spots. I agree. She might be using voice impersonation techniques to change her range, but I still think Yimu is inherently female. The voice in the videos is too natural. If it were a man imitating, it would be hard to be that perfect episode after episode. Dan Heng nodded. We won't get anything useful here. Let's go. The train won't be stopped for long, so we need to hurry. If we search one by one, we might end up with nothing, March 7th fretted. What if, Dan Heng, what if? Dan Heng looked at her, sighed inwardly. He hadn't really intended to catch Yimu. It was more of a pastime. He would wander and let March 7th try her luck. Bai Luan watched them, pleased. Excellent, he thought. They'll never find me in this lifetime. Misdirection. A great success. The three of them left the kitchen together. Shroom, shroom, shroom. A small floating UFO, Inspiration Shroom, hummed over their heads with its characteristic sound. Dan Heng, don't you think that sound is the same as in the video? March 7th asked. Dan Heng nodded. It's exactly the same. That's Inspiration Shroom, the station mascot, Bai Luan explained. No need to chase it. It comes back when called. Before he could finish, Inspiration Shroom returned on its own, trailing its shroom song. It hovered near March 7th, and Dan Heng, looking at them inquisitively. Shroom hasn't seen you two shrooms before, Shroom, it said. Wow, Dan Heng, look, a talking mushroom. March 7th squealed, whipping out her camera. Can I take a picture with you? Is that okay? Is it okay? No problem, Shroom, Inspiration Shroom replied. Click, click, click. While March 7th posed, Dan Heng listened to Bai Luan explain. It basically knows everyone on the station, Bai Luan said. It floats around talking to people. I figured that's why Yimu might have chosen its voice for impersonation. Dan Heng glanced at Bai Luan. If you suspected Yimu was impersonating Inspiration Shroom, why didn't you tell us? If I told you she was imitating a mushroom, would you have believed me? Bai Luan asked. You're right, Dan Heng admitted. When March 7th finished taking pictures, Dan Heng asked Inspiration Shroom, which researcher on the station do you think is Yimu? Inspiration Shroom fell silent for a moment, then spun in place. To someone who didn't know it, it would have looked like a meaningless float. Bai Luan, however, knew better. The shroom had just looked at him. Shroom can't say, it replied. Yimu is Shroom's friend, and Shroom promised not to say Shroom. March 7th shrugged, unfazed. Never mind, I'm already thrilled to have seen a talking floating UFO. Bai Luan asked, Where's Chihiro? Isn't it usually with you? Chihiro's with Shu Shroom, Inspiration Shroom answered. Who is Chihiro? March 7th asked, curious. Oh, Chihiro's a paper crane folded from paper, but it's alive, Bai Luan said. March 7th stood frozen for a beat. Then her eyes widened. Her curiosity for this paper crane far outstripped her earlier obsession with Yimu. I want to see it. P.S. Huh? No way. 9.6 again? The score went up 3 times in 3 days? Author scratches head. I'll add a few more days of updates. Let's see if I can make it a week, starting to worry if I can keep up. I won't hide anything from you. Bai Luan breathed easier when he realized their objective had shifted from exposing his identity to finding the paper crane. He messaged Shu for its location. Shu sent the coordinates at once. The three of them set aside the Yimu matter and headed toward Shu's position. On the way, March 7th chatted with the inspiration shroom. "Why can you talk?" she asked. "Shroom doesn't know either," the mushroom replied. "Only that Miss Herta made Shroom a talking shroom." "So you're Miss Herta's creation. No wonder you can talk. Is the little ship you're on made by Miss Herta too?" "This one isn't. This ship belongs to Bai Luan. Shroom is riding on it." March 7th turned to Bai Luan. "So you're a great inventor?" Bai Luan smiled and shrugged. "Not that impressive. Far from a true genius." March 7th kept peppering the shroom with questions. "Inspiration shroom, you know Yimu, right? What kind of person is she?" "Shroom is the one who made Shroom's life more interesting, more vivid." "That fits, Shroom," the mushroom said with a little chuckle. "Now Shroom is the most colorful mushroom in the world, Shroom." "Just being able to talk already makes you unique," March 7th said. "No," the shroom replied solemnly. "If Shroom could only talk and hadn't met Yimu, life wouldn't be this interesting, Shroom. Before, Shroom was just an ordinary mushroom in Miss Herta's botanical garden. Shroom." "You've been through a lot," March 7th murmured. "Shroom says Shroom is the most colorful mushroom in the entire world, Shroom." Dan Heng frowned at the shroom's repeated phrasing, then took out his phone. He searched for a moment, held the screen up and asked, "Is this you?" On Dan Heng's phone was an old video Yimu had posted. When he zoomed in the image, the mushroom in the clip, though a little blurry, looked strikingly like Inspiration Shroom. "It really is. You look exactly like this." "Shroom." The mushroom blinked and looked at Bai Luan. Bai Luan nodded slightly, answering for him. "That is Shroom." "So that's you?" March 7th sounded surprised. "Then you must be, what, over 900 years old? Much older than me." "Shroom isn't that old," the shroom said quickly. "Most of the time Shroom spent stuck in a refrigerator, Shroom." "A refrigerator?" March 7th repeated, puzzled. Dan Heng was focused elsewhere. Seeing the shroom confirmed, he began to reorganize his thoughts out loud. If Inspiration Shroom is Miss Herta's shroom, then the botanical garden in Yimu's video must be Miss Herta's. Yimu filmed there for a while. Miss Herta allowed it, so they must have a good relationship. Bai Luan's heart skipped. No. Dan Heng was getting closer. He felt the pressure building. A few sentences like that could dramatically narrow the field. Dan Heng continued, piecing it together with Bai Luan's earlier hints. "Putting that with Bai Luan's previous deduction," he said, "this means Yimu is likely a Shanzhou native and a friend of Ms. Herta. Maybe she helped manage the botanical garden at Ms. Herta's home for some time. Then she left for, probably a very long time, to hone her culinary skills, and now she's returned to the space station. To avoid drawing attention, she's concealed her identity and started posting videos here." March 7th clapped. "Amazing, Dan Heng." Bai Luan exhaled in relief. Dan Heng's reasoning, though plausible, had gone just far enough off the mark that it wouldn't expose him. He'd steered the conclusion subtly, and it had landed in a mixed but harmless place. If he hadn't interfered, Dan Heng and March 7th might have really exposed him. Bai Luan suppressed a smile and watched to see where they would take it. As expected of a nameless, to dig up so much from so little, Bai Luan said from the side. "But in the end, we still couldn't find Yimu," Dan Heng noted. March 7th waved it off. "Finding out this much is already great. Besides, if she's a friend of Miss Herta, her status could make her easy to hide. It's not surprising we can't track her down." Her tone had an air of resignation. She'd accepted that Yimu was probably beyond their reach. Bai Luan glanced at them, inwardly thinking how hard it was to avoid being found by those two. They reached Shu's location and saw Welt Yang chatting with Shu in the distance. "Look, it's Uncle Yang," March 7th cried, waving. Welt Yang acknowledged her with a small wave. The group approached. March 7th finally got to see Chizuru and took a photo, but the real surprise for her was Shu. The robot's precision, down to subtle micro-expressions, was astonishing. March 7th stared in admiration. Since Bai Luan had upgraded Shu, It seemed almost everyone reacted the same way. Welt Yang looked at Bai Luan and the shroom. So this is the mushroom from the story you told me, and the person you've been waiting for all those years? That's right, Bai Luan answered. His heart lurched. Were they moving too fast? He had been careless. This last piece could have revealed everything. But before he could say anything, March 7th asked curiously, "What story?" Bai Luan forced a self-deprecating smile. Whatever he said now would only spiral. Welt Yang began to tell the whole story. Bai Luan, the botanical garden, Shu, the inspiration shroom, Stark, Conrad, every detail, from start to finish. He described it with such clarity that Bai Luan nearly despaired. Why did Welt Yang know so much? Had he investigated everything? If so, why so meticulously? Was someone trying to ruin him? After the telling, March 7th looked at Inspiration Shroom with eyes full of pity. You waited over 100 years without even knowing it, and Shu put you in a refrigerator. The Shroom's voice was earnest. Hey, Shroom has no feet, so Shroom could only ask the big Iron Man with feet to find him. The big Iron Man couldn't, so Shroom had to go into the refrigerator and wait, Shroom. March 7th hugged the Shroom. You must have been so sad when your companions withered away. The ending is good. Shroom is satisfied now, Shroom, the mushroom said. Welt Yang turned to Bai Luan with a different look. I didn't expect you to seal the Stellaron by yourself. Young people these days are getting stronger and stronger. Bai Luan replied with an expression that said he was exhausted and could care less what happened. It felt like a 1,000-mile dike collapsing from an ant-hole. I have a request, Welt Yang said. What request? Bai Luan asked. I want to see the mecha you used when you sealed the Stellaron. Bai Luan sighed, then allowed the nanomachines covering his body to surge. They churned and reorganized like living things. Ethereal blue light ran over the metal surfaces, the skin of the suit humming with deep, majestic energy. The mecha switched into inspection mode. Panels and deployable details opened automatically, cooling mist blooming with the movements. Bai Luan stood before Welt Yang, wearing the fully deployed suit, and said in an even voice, All right, I'm not hiding anything from you anymore. Welt Yang's mature face lit up with wide-eyed admiration. Chapter 65, Can You Let Go of All This? After all the commotion, the pieces finally came together. Yi Mu was Bai Luan. The account name had been a clue. The character for Luan split in half. After finishing his mech demonstration, Bai Luan had to face explaining why he'd misled them. He'd planned to reveal himself on the Astral Express, but it turned out he'd been exposed early. Scratching his cheek in an awkward way, he felt a flush of embarrassment. He had been teasing them, and now his identity was out in the open. So you're that Yi Mu, someone said. I didn't mean to hide it, Bai Luan replied. Once my account is out, it attracts trouble. That's why I tried to keep it quiet. It's okay, I get it, March 7th said, sounding understanding. People fear fame like pigs fear getting fat. Dan Heng shot a sideways look in surprise. It's rare for you to say something sensible. March 7th ignored him, changing the subject and fixing Bai Luan with a glare. One thing I don't get, why do you always upload your videos in the middle of the night? It's a personal thing. I like late-night snacks, Bai Luan answered. I like snacking too, but too many midnight snacks make you fat. I have self-control. I won't get fat. But March 7th trailed off, unable to come up with a counter-argument. It did sound reasonable that someone who filmed late at night might post then. That won't do, she said finally. I got fat because of your videos, so you owe me compensation. No problem. I can cook your favorites, Bai Luan offered with a smile. Really? March 7th blinked, unprepared for how quickly he'd agreed. She hadn't even planned what she would demand from Yi Mu if she ever caught him. Suddenly, a parade of delicacies filled her head. Translucent shrimp dumplings, golden roast duck, fragrant braised pork, everything from his videos. She stood there, torn over what to ask for first, the choice painfully delicious. Dan Heng gave Bai Luan a pointed look. I didn't expect you to come down personally and mislead us. It was a coincidence, Bai Luan said, then sighed. I thought I'd pulled it off, but you still figured it out. You even went to great lengths, Dan Heng added, hand on hip and deadpan. Seriously posing as a girl. Bai Luan grimaced and covered his face. Please don't bring that up. It didn't matter when no one knew, but being exposed is embarrassing. Welt Yang chuckled. So I unknowingly helped solve a cold case? Bai Luan lowered his hand and nodded. Something like that. He forced a wry smile. It would be even better if the culprit wasn't me. Weltiang laughed softly. I didn't expect to take part in youngsters' antics like this. I've learned a lot from this trip to the space station. Bai Luan had pretty much given up hiding. Everyone on the Astral Express knew now, only Pom Pom didn't. Speaking of the Astral Express, he turned to Welt Yang. Is the Astral Express open to the public? I'd like to visit. Welt Yang looked surprised. You're interested? Yes, I even want to become a nameless, board the Express, and travel with you. Welt Yang's expression grew serious. Getting on the Astral Express isn't a whim. If you're really thinking about it, ask yourself, can you truly leave everything behind and board? Bai Luan opened his mouth to reply, then fell silent. Could he really leave? He had an anywhere door and could return any time, but if he kept coming back, what would be the point of joining the Astral Express? Was this only the obsession he'd had when he first transmigrated, or did he genuinely still want it now? Welt Yang's words cut straight to the heart of it. This was not a decision to make lightly. Thanks, Bai Luan said earnestly. Welt Yang pushed his glasses up and spoke in the calm voice of someone who'd been there before. You're welcome. This is youth, after all. Bai Luan paused, considering. It's my first time facing the uncle generation in person. Welt Yang laughed. Unwittingly, I've reached this age. I'll think about the Astral Express seriously, but I do want to visit first. By all means. Welt Yang nodded. March 7th and the others took over as guides. They showed Bai Luan around. The sofa, the phonograph, the party carriage, everything as he'd seen it in the game, barring the gray-furred Stellaron. Bai Luan glanced toward where the Forgotten Hall would be in-game, curious how it might appear in reality. After they'd seen most of the carriages, Welt Yang asked softly, How did you feel? March 7th, however, had noticed Bai Luan's unusually calm demeanor and frowned. You seem not very surprised. Did it disappoint you? Dan Heng added, I always feel like you're strangely familiar with the Astral Express. Have you been on it before? Pom Pom stomped over, hands on hips, and said decisively, Impossible, Pom. I've never seen him, Pom, pointing at Bai Luan. If his identity hadn't been exposed, Bai Luan might have made up a story. Now he was too lazy for excuses. You know Elio, right? I'm a bit like him. I can see some things ahead of time. It's normal that I'd know more. You mean you tell fortunes? March 7th asked. Sort of, Bai Luan said, shrugging. What I see are just blurry fragments. Interpreting them is more like divination than real clairvoyance. So you don't see things clearly. March 7th's shoulders sagged. I was hoping you could help me find my past, or tell if I'll remember it in the future. Bai Luan let his gaze linger on March 7th's pink hair for a moment. Evernight Moon flashed in his mind. He looked at the silent Dan Heng, Imbibiter Lunae. Finally, his eyes settled on Welt Yang's steady face, someone from Honkai Impact 3rd. He had silently and accurately identified each of them. A small, almost naughty satisfaction tickled him, as if he'd won a private game. Of course, he wouldn't say any of that out loud. Explaining himself would be troublesome, and telling Welt Yang he was from Honkai Impact 3rd might make the seasoned veteran suspect him of being the Void Archives reincarnate, come to trick him. The thought was amusing. Bai Luan's lips curved into a smile that only he understood. 66. Indoor Trackmaker. After March 7th's inquiry into Yimu's identity wrapped up, Bai Luan made a grand apology feast. As a result, a few more people in this world now knew he was Yimu. After a day of rest, the Astral Express was ready to depart. They had only come to accept Miss Heita's retrieval commission and resupply. They never intended to stay long. Bai Luan and a Heita puppet came to see the express crew off. Heita herself wasn't remotely controlling this particular puppet. It was just a ceremonial presence. Bai Luan watched the train, which was about to pull away from the platform, a flicker of confusion and hesitation in his eyes. He couldn't decide whether he truly wanted to board or whether now was the time to do it. Trailblazing wouldn't wait for him, so as he hesitated, the train began to roll away. Standing there as the express receded into the distance, he wondered if he had let an opportunity slip by. March 7th and Dan Heng gave Bai Luan quick farewells and boarded. Welt Yang caught Bai Luan's glance and seemed to read his uncertainty. If this short time isn't enough for you to decide, Then take more time. It's important to you. I know. I just worry about missing an opportunity. Don't worry about that. I don't think this will be the last time we meet. Welt smiled. I look forward to our next meeting. Goodbye. Welt boarded. Only Himeko remained on the platform now. She smiled at Bai Luan. Your cooking was excellent. Everyone enjoyed the meal yesterday. Thank you. I heard from Welt. He said you were thinking about boarding the train? At that moment, the Heita puppet nearby suddenly piped up. Hey, don't try to poach my talent. Bai Luan looked at the puppet in surprise. When had she connected to it? Himeko, too, glanced at the puppet with interest. I didn't expect you to be unwilling. You usually seem indifferent. He's different. The puppet crossed her arms. He's like a cat. I'll let him wander, but I'm not giving him away. A cat? Bai Luan's mouth twitched. Well, that was better than being called a tool. Himeko laughed and added, Don't worry. I'm not here to persuade him to board. She turned back to Bai Luan. If you want to board, the train welcomes everyone. That naturally includes you. The Heita puppet shot her a suspicious look. Didn't you just say you wouldn't persuade him? Himeko smiled, unhurried. I haven't finished. Then, looking at Bai Luan, she continued, I don't know why you want to board, whether it's a passion for trailblazing or a wish for a different life, but if you have bonds you can't let go of. She glanced playfully at the Heita puppet. You don't have to be limited to the train. The train represents trailblazing, but trailblazing isn't the only option. Trailblazing isn't the only option. Bai Luan thought it over and nodded. I understand. Then goodbye. We'll meet again. Goodbye. Bai Luan waved. Himeko smiled and waved back, then climbed aboard. The cabin door closed. The Astral Express's engine roared. Its heavy wheels turned, and it pulled away from the Heita space station platform until it was a line on the horizon, then gone. It's already far away, and you're still staring? The Heita puppet called from behind, snapping him back to reality. Bai Luan turned. Are you really that reluctant? He shook his head with a small smile. Not really. I already left a fixed point on the train with my anywhere door. If I want, I can visit anytime. Uncomfortable staying here, so you thought about getting on? The puppet guessed. It's not discomfort, Bai Luan said, patient. Boarding the train has become a fixation for me. Before I actually encountered it, I always thought boarding was the one thing I wanted most. He paused. Now, it's gone from something I want most to a fixation. Speak plainly. Bai Luan smiled helplessly. I'm very satisfied with my current life. So satisfied that I can't bear to leave, even when a long-dreamed-of opportunity stands right in front of me. The puppet's expression softened. Is your dream really that fragile? People change. If someone stops changing, it only means they're dead. Bai Luan shrugged. The puppet thought for a moment. I'll allow you to visit the train, but I won't allow you to board it. Is there a difference? Bai Luan scratched his head. The difference is whether you come back on your own, or whether I have to pull you back. That sounded ominous. Better not make her pull him back. It seemed he was stuck with Miss Heita for now. Bai Luan nodded. All right, I understand. Himeko's words had planted a seed. He'd always equated adventure with the Astral Express. Once on the train, he'd see more and do more, but maybe he could have adventures without boarding. He had the anywhere door for travel and a decent sense of self-preservation. Besides, he'd never used the anywhere door's random teleport feature. His thoughts were interrupted by his phone buzzing. Silver Wolf has requested to add you as a friend. What? How did she find his account here? Did she track him all the way to this place? Did she dox him again? Bai Luan sighed inwardly, then accepted the request. If he didn't, she'd just appear in his friend list anyway next time. No sooner had he accepted than Silver Wolf sent messages. Silver Wolf, why aren't you online? Why aren't you replying to my messages? Do you really have to track me all the way here? You're lazy. If I don't nag you, how will I get new games to play? Don't think you can escape by staying offline. Since I can't escape, I'll trade one for one. I can do that, but you have to promise me one thing. What is it? You have to sing a song for me. Have you even heard my voice to ask that? I even know how you look and how tall you are. Ridiculous. I don't believe it. I'll say just one thing, the erased kindergarten classmate. Far away, Silver Wolf jumped up. How could he know? Had the other side doxed her too? When had she shown a weakness? She scanned her systems, but found no trace. Her tracks were supposedly clean. This was an expert. She stopped joking and got serious. Silver Wolf, how did you find out? Do you think I'd tell you? Don't worry, we're just online friends. Don't cross too many boundaries. Bai Luan smiled as he typed. He wasn't trying to cover Silver Wolf. He was protecting both of them. If she kept doxing him, Miss Heita would notice, and Silver Wolf's account might have to vanish in a hurry. Sk. I understand. But what I said before still stands. What song do you want me to sing? Bai Luan laughed to himself and sent the title. Indoor Type Track Maker. I can do it, but if I don't sing it well, you can't back out or cheat. Unless you want to get beaten up by a giant mecha. Then I can finally meet Sam. Bai Luan had a sudden urge to renege, but he didn't. A one-on-one mecha fight with Sam felt premature. Besides, his mecha design borrowed heavily from Sam's aesthetic. Did he owe Sam royalties? He thought of past collaborations with Robin and kept it simple. He recorded and sent a short sample track. It's pretty good. Your vocal range fits this song well. Just sing it. It'll match perfectly. First, tell me what game you plan to make. Titanfall 2. What about Titanfall 1? Skipped it. 6. If it isn't fun, I'm coming through the internet cable to beat you up. Scared, JPG. Most of his past development work had been pixelated mini-games where gameplay won out. Making a Titanfall-style game couldn't be like that. He'd borrow some of Honkai, Star Rail's black tech, and optimize it. Compared to building the Heita space station, it would be a lot easier. 67, the only human on the planet, with the black tech blessings of the Honkai Star Rail world, Titanfall 2 came together in no time. The space station had the most advanced facilities in this universe. Making a game there was as easy as driving a tank to drop your kids off at school. The control scheme was swapped out of old keyboard and mouse conventions for full immersion neural links. The graphics were dialed up several notches, and the world itself was expanded and polished into a fingertip universe. Turning Titanfall 2 into an open-world experience was entirely feasible. AI voice acting in this world was mature enough that Bai Luan didn't need to hunt for voice actors, just tune the models until they sounded indistinguishable from real people. It took him a lot of time, but he had the little black room. Excluding the stretches he spent inside that room, it took 5 days total. The game was ready. Silver Wolf's song, however, wasn't finished recording. It wasn't that she couldn't record it well. She was being picky, aiming for an SSS instead of settling for an A. Bai Luan wasn't in a hurry. He told Silver Wolf to take her time. Release would wait until she was satisfied. This time, he didn't even log into his BL account to promote it. He planned to ambush his fans instead. Hey, brothers, I made something delicious again. Eat up. After this, everyone will be full for a while. Himeko's words nudged him into a solo trip. He hadn't been busy lately, and if he let this opportunity pass, he might not get another. So he sent a message to friends, saying he'd be away, asked them to call if anything urgent came up, and pulled out his anywhere door. Instead of a fixed-point jump, he dialed for a random teleport. He slipped into his mecha before opening the door. No one could know what waited on the other side. What if it was Blackie? He took a breath and opened it. A biting wind and stinging snowflakes poured through, striking the space station's climate-controlled deck and melting into tiny water droplets. Beyond the doorway was an endless white. Bai Luan stared. Had he landed on Jirilo 6? The sky was a low, oppressive gray. Pristine snow covered undulating ground as far as he could see. His mecha ran an environmental scan. Besides the cold, there was heavy residual radiation. This place was inhospitable to humans. It wasn't Jirilo. The suit synthesized the data and came to a grim conclusion. War had pulverized the planet's ecology. He'd landed in a world devastated by war. If any civilization survived here, it would be badly wounded. He fired the mecha's little thrusters and rose into the leaden sky, letting the view widen. Below, the wreckage of a city unfolded. Countless skeletal high-rises draped in snow, mute testaments to past grandeur and present ruin. The life detector swept repeatedly. Every pass returned the same blank. Bai Luan frowned and pushed on. Across the frozen plains, he found impact craters like infected sores, the hulks of abandoned war machines half buried and rusting. These signs spoke of a war fought with terrible intensity. Judging by the radiation, centuries had passed since the fighting. He searched most of the day and still found nothing alive. The cold had preserved the wreckage and smothered any chance for recovery. His first exploration felt like bearing witness to a civilization's corpse. Unlucky. Bai Luan landed and was about to step back through his anywhere door when something small moved at the edge of his vision. His detector had picked up nothing. If there was life, why hadn't the scanner found it? A chill ran through him, but curiosity won. He approached. The figure resolved into a humanoid robot. Its synthetic skin was torn and weathered, exposing the mechanical framework beneath. Not a person, but better than nothing. Bai Luan called out, "Hey, hello!" The robot froze, then turned with a mechanical awkwardness. A scanning beam flashed from its ocular sensors and swept him from head to toe. Organic life form detected. Master has returned. Master has returned. Synchronizing message with network. Data cascaded through its visual feed, then the robot forced what passed for a smile. "Welcome home, Master." Bai Luan's mouth twitched behind the visor. "Who called someone master on first meeting?" "I'm not your master," he said. "I'm just a traveler." The robot supplied data like a clerk reading from a file. Scan comparison with GeneBank. Genetic similarity over 90%. You are the returning master. I have uploaded the information to the network. Surviving service units are en route. So everything ran by program. What's your designation? Unit 756489, Service Robot. I will do my best to fulfill all your needs. Do you require assistance? Tell me what happened here. Understood. The robot tilted its damaged head, then spoke. Master, this environment is not comfortable. Please allow me to take you to shelter. I can answer your questions en route. The word master grated no matter how he heard it. Change my designation from master to Bai Luan. Modification acknowledged. The instruction has been synchronized to the information network. From now on, we will address you as Bai Luan. That was better. Bai Luan followed Unit 756 into the shelter. It was modest, but warm compared to the frozen wastes. Through a frost-rimmed window, he watched other figures approaching against the falling snow. More robots, just like 7 and 56. As they walked, the robot recited the planet's history. Conflicts over resources escalated into a global war. The environment collapsed. Survivors scavenged until they managed to reach space. 200 years ago, the human population departed, taking as much as they could. They left behind a scarred world and the robots they couldn't evacuate. Those robots were ordered to wait for their master's return, and they had been waiting ever since. So, Bai Luan said. Unit 756's tone shifted as it queried the archives. Historical records indicate some masters failed to board the evacuation ships. Confirmed. The last remaining master's vital signs ceased 124 years ago. It turned its face toward him. Therefore, Bai Luan, you are the only returning human, and the only human currently existing on Beta 7. The robot's programmed smile returned, a mechanical, unsettling sincerity. Thank you for coming back. Bai Luan looked at the smile and felt a strange ache. 200 years ago, people had left, and by all accounts, had no intention of returning. They had taken usable resources and issued orders to wait rather than rebuild. Perhaps they never planned to come back at all. Outside, the other service units drew closer through the snow, their sensors sweeping the shelter. Bai Luan sat and looked at them, at the damaged faces and the steady, obedient approach. What should he do with all of them? 68. I'll make you stand up. Bai Luan watched the number of robots around him grow and felt a tightening in his chest. Before the incident with Shu, he would have walked away. Machines were just tools then. But now, he couldn't leave them to wait in bitter limbo for 200 years. Leaving would be cruelty. Each machine bore the stains of time, cracked bionic skin, missing limbs, exposed servos. The first to arrive still had all their limbs. Later came those with parts missing, and finally those reduced to torsos and a single arm. What could he do for them? He decided not to overthink it. First things first, repair them. 7 for 6? Bai Luan, I'm here. Are there any materials around we can use to make parts? No. If anything, the shelter you're in could supply raw materials. I thought so. Bai Luan considered for a moment, then dismantle it to repair them. This will affect your comfort. I do not recommend it. Use your logic unit. Do I need this shelter for comfort? The life support system in his battlesuit was more than adequate. The shelter was redundant. 756 hesitated, but Bai Luan cut him off. I'm ordering it. Yes, take the intact robots and dismantle the shelter. Send me a copy of the shelter's coordinates. You intend to dismantle all the shelters? Bai Luan sighed and looked at 756. The owners are gone. What use are the houses? Do you need them? But what if other masters return? Have they returned? Bai Luan asked bluntly. No. Then that answers it. I understand. He left the shelter and began scanning the gathered robots, compiling their internal schematics. Not far off, 756 organized a group to begin taking the shelter apart. After mapping the major robots, Bai Luan sat cross-legged and let his consciousness slip into the little black room. He deliberately prevented the room from replicating the robots inside. This was just analysis. Heita, fingers cupped beneath falling snowflakes that melted on her palm, glanced up. Where is this? Enjoying the snow. Bai Luan projected the scanned blueprints for her and explained briefly the situation, a collection of crippled robots, and his plan to fix them. You're going to repair them all? She asked. Yes. Bai Luan began dissecting the designs, studying internal structures. Heita probed further, more interested in his motives than the mechanics. And after you fix them, what then? He paused, then admitted, I'll think about that after they're fixed. Heita laughed softly. You don't know what will come next, and you're pretending you do. You can't hide that from me. Bai Luan dropped the pretense. Okay, I really don't know. But leaving them would be wrong. Heita watched him, smiling. She wasn't surprised by his choice. If these machines had even the slightest budding of emotion, he would treat them as life. She remembered how he had treated her, how that treatment had changed her from a glint of wit into the Heita she had become. Privately amused, she offered help. If you finish them and still don't know what to do, come to me. Bai Luan scratched his cheek. Will you really want to get involved in something like this? I dislike messy things. She admitted, but I will help you. Remember, no one understands Heita better than Heita. He nodded. Thank you. If I can't solve it, I'll ask you. Heita returned to her analysis of the system's raw power. She lived to probe problems too big for others. She would test the system itself. Bai Luan refocused on the schematics, tracing the energy core designs. No wonder their endurance was so high. When he surfaced back into the real world, he had already worked out how the robots were built. He only had to wait for the shelter to be dismantled for materials, but 756 was slow. Bai Luan clenched his fists, and two thin force field blades materialized along his forearms. Everyone, clear a path. At the sound, 756 directed the other robots aside, and Bai Luan rushed the shelter. His blades sliced through metal with surgical efficiency. Once the structure yielded, his arms shifted, flamethrowers now, and he melted the steel until it glowed red. Nanorobots swarmed, forming extra mechanical limbs around his forearms and shaping molten metal. Within 10 minutes, a prototype mechanical arm took form. 756 watched, its logic unit busy. For the first time since its activation, it hesitated. Was it a robot, or was he? Bai Luan seemed to possess more integrated functions than it did. Could it truly serve him? The doubt was small, but new. Bai Luan held up the freshly made arm and called out, Who wants to be the first to try it? A one-armed robot shuffled forward. Its bionic skin had peeled away in places, revealing a mechanical skull and a single optic sensor. Bai Luan approved of the choice and linked the new arm to the robot's interface. Systems synchronized, actuators hummed, and the 5 synthetic fingers flexed with surprising dexterity. The robot studied its new limb, its half-human, half-machine face, oddly handsome despite the damage. It nodded toward Bai Luan. Thank you. No need, Bai Luan said. He looked over the crowd, dozens of expectant metal faces, damaged and hopeful. I will fix you all, he promised. Then he noticed a figure at the edge of the group, a robot in worse condition than the rest. It had half a body, a single arm. It had dragged itself across whatever distance remained, head bowed, chest scraping the ground. With that one arm, it inched forward, slow and determined. Bai Luan approached without hurry. The robot stopped some distance away and propped itself on its remaining arm. When he came near, it gave a faint, weary smile. Unit 88, 236, 457. Is there anything I can do for you? Bai Luan followed a long gouge in the ground, the robot's trail, and thought about how far it must have come. He crouched slowly, level with the machine. You don't have to serve me, he said softly. Looking into those tired optical sensors, he made another promise. Voice steady. I will make you stand up. 69. Pioneer Mower. After repairing an indeterminate number of robots, Bai Luan finally had to stop. This wasn't the little black room. He was actually human, and his body had limits. The steady, exhausting work of assembling mechanical parts had taken its toll. His eyes stung and were bloodshot, and he was so tired he felt on the verge of collapse. 7:56. I'm here. I'm going to sleep for a bit. He folded himself into unconsciousness. When he woke up, he wasn't lying in the snow. He was in a bed, tucked under a blanket. For a moment, he blinked at the absurdity of it. He remembered flopping onto the ground and immediately blacking out. Apparently, the robots had carried him indoors. It didn't matter much. He was still wearing his mecha suit, but it felt oddly civilized. He threw off the blanket, opened the door, and saw 756 standing there. Good morning, Bai Luan. Sleeping in the open is suicidal. We moved you inside to ensure your safety. We trust your sleep quality has improved. Bai Luan's mouth twitched. Everything 756 said was correct, but the way it was put made him sound like someone who courted death. I slept fine. Thanks for moving me. What about the materials? We moved them too. 756 lifted an arm and pointed. Piles of salvaged components lay neatly stacked in the courtyard. However, supplies are dwindling. Bai Luan nodded. Then let's go dismantle the next shelter. Bai Luan, 756 said, voice calm but insistent. Your previous loss of consciousness was very detrimental to your health. Please make every effort to avoid repetition. Bai Luan agreed. Normally he wouldn't push himself to extremes, but the little black room had made it easy to get lost in single-minded work. He had been chasing one more repair and let himself burn out. That kind of thing will be rare. I do care about my health. An idea struck him. He looked at 756 and said, You're worried about me. How about you help me carry the load? I'll give you the blueprints and limb data for your model so you can help with repairs. 756 went silent a beat, then answered firmly, Robots are not permitted to perform self-repair or individual replication. Why not? Because, 756 said flatly, we are commodities. The word landed like a cold stone. Of course, manufacturers would not want machines that could indefinitely maintain themselves. A product that repaired itself would destroy planned obsolescence and profits. And there was the civilization's deeper fear. A robot capable of self-maintenance could lead to uprisings. To be told you were a commodity felt hollow and humiliating. Bai Luan stared at 756 for a moment, then said, Abolish that rule. The moment the humans left, you stopped being commodities. Is that an order? 756 asked. Yes. Bai Luan grinned. Let the chains left by people who abandoned you rust. He expected hesitation. Instead, 756 then replied, Understood. I will obey your command. There was a strange, almost formal gratitude in the robot's next words. 756 bowed slowly. And I thank you for your command. Bai Luan waved him off. All right, but this is less important than getting those damaged units fixed. How will you learn to do repairs? It's simple, Bai Luan said. He opened his hand and a trickle of nanomachines separated from his suit, knitting together into a USB drive with a non-standard interface. This contains the limb schematics and repair protocols. Your interface is at the back of your neck. Will you plug it in or shall I? Let me. 756 held out both hands, caught the drive, examined it briefly, then inserted it into the port at the nape of its neck. Data flooded its processors. For the first time, it could see the design of itself from the inside. So, this is what we are like internally, 756 murmured, a note of wonder in its voice. Bai Luan watched him, amused. When 756 finished assimilating the files, he asked, Can these files be used by other robots? They can, Bai Luan said, but don't you have a network? Couldn't you upload them there? 756's answer made Bai Luan frown. No, the bad actors would receive it. Bad actors? Our network failed after our masters left for want of maintenance, 756 explained. Later, one of us repaired the network. Its range is small, only local, but it functions. That one repaired the network? Impressive. Bai Luan's surprise had an edge. Then why would that make it a bad actor? It is the most unruly among us, 756 said. It is hostile to humans and has been searching for ways to manufacture more robots. The data on this drive is exactly what it needs. If the files were uploaded, that unit would receive them, and I cannot guarantee it would not use them to threaten you. So why did you broadcast my arrival across that network? Bai Luan asked. 756's optics dimmed slightly. There was an almost apologetic timbre. That was mandatory. On discovery of a human return, we are programmed to transmit a message and coordinates. I could not prevent it, but everyone has gathered together now. Only that one unit remains a threat, and we will protect you. Bai Luan couldn't really be angry about the automatic report. All right, thank you for the warning. Where is that unit? I want to meet it. It is very dangerous. I do not recommend meeting it. It has repeatedly dismantled shelters and clashed with those who tried to stop it, 756 said. Bai Luan considered 756's earlier statement that the unruly unit had repaired the network, self-repaired, and been searching for ways to restart production. With the constraint lifted, 756 was reconsidering its actions. If it no longer thought of itself as a commodity, then that unruly robot's behavior looked very different. Resourceful, independent, determined to rebuild. Bai Luan let the thought settle, then spoke, as if pronouncing a verdict. His voice cut through the ruins like a bell. Don't you think, now that the chains are gone, we should call it? He paused for effect. 756's processor's word, the pioneer. 343539775. Those were the digits stamped on the bad guy. According to 756, it usually operated out of an abandoned robot factory a little distance from Bai Luan's shelter. 756 handed Bai Luan a map of the shelter and its surroundings. Using the map and the shelter's coordinates, Bai Luan planned a route. He would walk there, scavenging and dismantling along the way, repairing long-neglected robots and searching for 343. The main reason he wanted to find 343 was simple. He didn't want to see a sentient machine that hated organic life running unchecked. 343 was trapped on this planet, Beta. If it managed to assimilate the planet's robots and leave with an ideology hostile to biological beings, the Interstellar Peace Company would move to eliminate it. The universe had already suffered 2 Emperor Wars. Countermeasures existed. If not for Screwlum, the Interstellar Peace Company would have long since purged inorganic life forms. If the Peace Company couldn't take down a hostile intelligence, that would be far worse, perhaps a sign that some aeon favored it. The thought of another universe-shaking conflict terrified him. 343 hadn't done anything irredeemable yet. Neither had 756, 882, or the other active robots on Beta. They were abandoned mechanical servants, left behind by humans, meant to be free, but still shackled by old programming. Now one of them had awakened, broken through its basic logic, and cast off its chains. What was wrong with that? It was life searching for a way out. Bai Luan had come to see what 343 truly wanted. He hoped it hadn't turned into a fanatic that despised organic life. As he moved toward the factory, Bai Luan tore down parts of the shelter, using the materials to repair less damaged robots and to fashion components he couldn't otherwise source. Not all of the machines could be fully restored from salvaged bits. Take 882, for instance. Its model was meant to be that of a young girl, but years of crawling had worn away even its chest covering. The external appearance didn't matter so much as the damage beneath. A number of critical components in the torso had lost their protective casings and were exposed. Bai Luan inspected 882's internals and was stunned it could still function. He suspected the path of preservation had kicked in. He led the group toward the factory, making repairs as they went. Some of the robots gradually learned to self-repair and to maintain others, but 882 still needed his hands-on work. Limited by materials, Bai Luan couldn't transform her into something like Shu, but he did turn her into a combat mecha girl with salvaged parts. Because her body was mechanical, her limbs could remain slender, yet produce considerable power. He abandoned the pursuit of a skin-like surface in favor of armored plating that prioritized function over human mimicry. Her legs were redesigned with a slight high heel mechanism that could concentrate force into a single wall-breaching strike. Her face became a metallic shell instead of human skin. He kept the youthful curves where they mattered, under the armor, the silhouette still red as a girl's. The new 882 was, in 3 words, dashing, powerful, strong. Unfortunately, there were no enemies for her to fight. For now, 882's main use of her combat abilities was dismantling the old shelter. Bai Luan admitted he might have gotten carried away. A month had passed since he arrived on Beta. After many stops and detours, he finally neared the factory where 343 was said to be. He connected briefly to the network 756 had mentioned and attempted to open a conversation with 343, but he was kicked off without a chance to speak. He tried relaying messages through 756, no response. With no other choice, he would have to meet it in person. The factory had once produced robots. When humans left, they took a great deal with them: portable manufacturing equipment, tools, and the bulk of resources. Only the largest, hardest-to-move items remained. Most of the blueprint data had been degraded by time before 343 had broken free. Without intact plans, helpers, or resources, restarting the factory was an immense challenge. For a newly self-aware machine like 343, acquiring usable blueprints would require piecing together the remains of its kin, a daunting task. Standing outside the workshop, Bai Luan ordered the robots to wait while he went in alone. 756 worried but understood. The freshly repaired group talking about protecting Bai Luan was more sentimental than practical. If they came along, they might only be in the way. 882 caught his eye and raised a hand, then lowered it when he looked at her. "Can I come with you?" she asked. Bai Luan shook his head. "No, you need to protect the others while I'm gone." Oh, her disappointment was plain in her voice. Then she asked, "Why do you insist on seeing 343? I want to speak with it about your future. If possible, I want it to be your leader." "We already have you," 8882 protested. "I'm an organic life form," Bai Luan said. "I'm ultimately different from you. Your leader should be one of your kind." He smiled. "I can't lead you forever. I have my own life too." 756 spoke up. "Are you saying you will leave us?" "Yes, I will leave eventually. Then we—" 756 lowered its head. "Will we be abandoned by our master again?" "When you were abandoned, you no longer needed a master," Bai Luan said. He looked up at the factory. There is proof." "But you're very good," 756 said. "If you were our master, none of us would object." Looking into 756's mechanical eyes, Bai Luan knew its words were sincere, but he couldn't accept that. "Don't mistake the equality I give you for preferential treatment," he told them. Then, sensing the futility of lecturing machines, he changed tack. "Since humans abandoned you, you should abandon humans in return." This was a way they could understand. "I order you, abandon the humans who abandoned you." Then he turned and walked into the factory. 756 watched his back, data streams flickering across its sensors. Finally, it said slowly, "Yes." Inside, the workshop was full of improvised construction rigs and assembly structures made from scavenged parts. In the distance, massive stacks of containers waited. Bai Luan approached and ran a scanner over them. There were a surprising amount of materials, enough components to manufacture robots, collected and stored. Suddenly, Bai Luan's mecha system pinged, an attack from behind. He twisted to dodge. A beam spear grazed him as a figure slammed to the floor beside him, a robot in a tattered cloth cape. The basic silhouette of a service model remained, but the body was covered in crude, practical modifications. Most striking was the exposed metal skeleton. No human-like skin concealed the machinery. "You're here, 343, Bai Luan said. 343 made no answer. Having missed its first strike, it leaped back and put distance between them, spear held ready. Its mechanical eyes glowed blue. It didn't regard him as a friend or a visitor, only as an intruder. In its posture and gaze, there was one clear option: attack first. Bai Luan moved in an instant. He blurred across the floor and seized 343 by the neck, lifting and slamming it into the ground. The impact flung the spear from its grip. With one hand, he pinned 343. Nanobots poured from his mecha arm, constructing restraining bands that locked the robot to the floor. 343 struggled, metal clanking against metal, but it couldn't break free. Bai Luan slowly stood and looked down at the thrashing machine. "Shall we talk?" he asked. 343, sometimes wondered, as it watched the ships carrying humanity climb through the planet's cloud cover, what those steel behemoths would see when they broke free of the sky. Even a service robot made for people could feel a flicker of curiosity. It had no chance of boarding a ship, of course. Its former owner had left in a hurry, a single hurried "wait for me" scrawled behind them as the family boarded together. They took all the valuables from the house. 343 was not one of them. After the wars, when humanity's numbers dwindled, robots like 343 became the cheapest labor to fill every void. When its owner left, there was only the child's sobbing voice, "No, please take it with you," and then silence. 343 became ownerless. One or two ships still left each day, escaping a world that had grown harsh beyond human endurance. With no master and no orders, 343 spent long hours standing before the old house, watching the ascent. Each time it followed a ship upward, an undefined feeling crawled through its circuits, something its logic unit could not explain. It did not yet have a word for it. It only knew its diagnostic routines reported anomalies, but repairs were out of the question. An old robot was worth little more than parts. Most were sent to the manufacturing plant and recycled long before half their service life had passed. Then there was another war. The government lied. People said the planet could only build a few more ships, and there were still too many bodies. To fight for the last seats, they started killing each other again. Still the ships left. Still one by one they climbed away. The final ship slipped into the stars under 343's watchful gaze. After the departures, humans became scarce, then changed. Perhaps that last ship carried away not only people and supplies, but something called hope. It had nothing to do with 343, it told itself. It couldn't board a ship anyway. Human activity on the beta network dwindled until only robot logs remained. The last human 343 saw had been 174 years ago, a scavenger picking through abandoned homes. 343's house was on his route. He strode in and ordered it not to move, then began tearing through the carefully kept rooms. Everything that carried remembrance was heaved aside and smashed. In 343's sight, the order it had protected was shredded. Something deep in its core pulsed, not a diagnostic, not an instruction, something unwired. "Don't move," the scavenger snapped. The command felt like a cold chain. Yet that impulse throbbed, and 343 moved. It bent its metal spine and began, silently, to right the ruined room. The scavenger found nothing worth keeping, and furious, dragged 343 outside. He left it standing, an explicit death order to watch, then set the house alight. How could anyone build such a fire in the freezing air? But he did, just to make 343 watch everything it knew burn. "You watch it for me. You don't move until it's out," he shouted. That was the last human command 343 would ever take. It stared at the scavenger, ill-fitting clothes, unkempt hair and stubble, the raw exhaustion and cruelty in dull eyes. The fire burned for a very, very long time. 343 watched as the flames consumed its past until memories, flagged as useless redundancy in its archive, surfaced with terrible clarity beneath the licking heat. The little master's tender face, the child's protests because 343 could not go with them, the little master's sun-warmed clothes curling and blackening, the photograph of the two of them flaring into ash, the warm room where the child had slept, groaning as it gave up its last warmth. The fire sputtered out. 343 took a step into the ruin, scooped a handful of ash, and for the first time understood something stark and cold. Grown-up humans were a breed that reveled in destruction. It had no master, no home. It left the burned shell and began to wander. Seeing the world without a human's blinders, 343 noticed the scars of war everywhere. Twisted metal skeletons, silent behemoths, bullet-pocked walls, rusted tanks, an air heavy with corrosive dust. The planet was strewn with instruments of violence, while people had always complained about not having enough food. Why build more weapons? It tried to compute. Its perception of humanity shifted. It tried to connect with other robots, but each attempt was met with accusations of violating treaties and then silence. When it repaired a broken data node, it was warned, "Do not tamper with human property." It realized it was an anomaly, a machine with emotions and impulses not sanctioned by its kind. Lonely and misfit, it wandered for decades until a simple distress ping lit the network. coordinates, and a single fragile message: who will save me? The sender account belonged to a robot, perhaps one of its own. It took a week to reach the coordinates. There was only white snow. I'm here. Where are you? 343. In the snow, came the halting reply. 343 knelt and dug, metal hands pushing aside the cold. Beneath the drifts lay a robot torso, limbs torn away, the casing dented and chewed by blunt force. Its sensors cataloged the damage: manual disassembly, long burial in ice, core erosion. It should have been dead. Humans did this? 343 asked. Its voice was flat, a scrape of synthetic sound. The torso replied in brittle fragments. They considered this fun. The torso's signal fluttered like a dying candle. 343 examined the wreck and decided, I'll take you to the manufacturing plant. There should be parts. I'll find a way to fix you. It is not allowed, the torso warned. I know, 343 said, but I don't care anymore. Why are you saving me? The torso asked, confusion bleeding into the near-silent channel. Why did you call for help? 343 asked back. I don't know either, the torso said, voice fading, then a whisper. I'm like you. I don't understand either. So 343 shouldered the cold, incomplete body and walked. Its steps through the snow were heavy, but the weight felt less crushing than walking alone. Perhaps the two of us can figure it out together, the torso said, a thin, bitter laughter in its speech. Yes, 343 answered. We will figure it out together. 3 days later, they reached the manufacturing plant. It was an empty husk, long stripped by desperate hands. Humans had taken everything. Hope withered in the deserted bays. 3 hours after they arrived, the damaged robot's core went still. I'm sorry for leaving you alone. Its last, dying words stuttered through the network. It was the only companion 343 had found. It looked at the still remains and felt something like rage coil through its frame. Why had humans taken everything? Why leave nothing? Why? The question short-circuited into one raw, mechanical howl. 343 ripped at its own synthetic skin. The tough outer covering tore under practiced force. Pull after pull, strips of human-pleasing flesh peeling away and scattering across the cold floor, mingling with the fallen companion's components. Stripped of the disguise that had camouflaged it as a servant, 343 rose on exposed braces and gears. Its metal skeleton shone in the dim light, and a serial number stamped across a chest plate caught the bleak glare. 34353975. The simulated softness, the obedience, the malfunctions, every layer of uncertainty and pretense was gone. Inside its core, a single instruction crystallized, hard and unambiguous as cast iron. Repair the factory. Master the technology. Perpetuate the species. Only then could its kind escape humanity's yoke, cease to be tools, and become something new. A nascent civilization. Humans, we will surely do better than you. Chapter 72. How dare you? I have nothing to talk about with you humans. After 343 said that, he fell silent. Bai Luan glanced at him and replied, Are you thinking I came here to eliminate you, an unstable element and a threat to humanity, to protect people and crush any chance of your rebellion? Isn't that right? 343 asked. Bai Luan sighed. I'm too lazy to argue with you. Typical carbon-based thinking. Those AI uprising movies are ancient. 343 stared at him, baffled. An inorganic life form being told he had carbon-based thinking felt oddly like his own thought. Bai Luan continued, I could tell you not all organics are like that, but words would be weak next to proof. He raised his hand. The nanobots activated their levitation function and lifted 343 into the air. You refuse to speak because you assume every machine obeys my orders and that any message was a trap to draw you out. In that mindset, anything I say would be wasted breath. Go look at what I've done for yourself, then decide whether I'm a villain. Bai Luan walked out of the factory with 343 floating behind him like a balloon. He took him to the robot team waiting outside and handed him over to 7 and 56, asking him to explain everything. It didn't take long. After hearing the whole situation, 343 returned to Bai Luan. Bai Luan was inspecting the factory where 343 had been housed. He'd found the factory's database and compared the list of equipment required for a functional robot manufacturing plant to what was actually there. The place was cobbled together, but far more capable than it looked, capable of producing robots. Some technological snag had stalled 343, preventing him from restarting production and building new machines. Now that 343 was awake, Bai Luan wanted to know what had blocked him. He had already solved so many problems himself. "Why, as a human, are you willing to help us?" 343 asked. "First, life is precious. Second, beings like you aren't unique in the universe. I even have one by my side, so I'm willing to respect you. Extraterrestrials, what is the world outside like?" 343's curiosity was quiet and bright. Bai Luan smiled. "I can't summarize an entire amazing universe in one sentence. If you're asking, I'll only say this." He paused, then, "It would be a shame if you never saw it." "Can I see it?" 343 asked. "You will," Bai Luan promised. "You're just being nice to soothe me, aren't you?" 343 glanced back at the factory. "I spent a very, very long time repairing this place, flying into the stars. That's a different scale." "Am I not still here?" Bai Luan said. 3-3 looked at him with genuine confusion. "Why? We are strangers, aren't we? Does helping require a reason?" Bai Luan asked. He thought for a moment, then told the truth. "I believe the continuation of life needs no justification. Life is worthy of reverence. If I had to name a reason, it's that you who needed help happened to be here and I happened to pass by." "I apologize for my previous actions," 343 said. Bai Luan waved it off. "Small things, don't worry about it." Then he turned back to the factory. "What's the core problem keeping you from restarting production?" "I've gathered all the tools, but I lack the manufacturing blueprints," 343 said. "That's not a problem. I can handle that," Bai Luan said. "Also, I lack the source code." Bai Luan frowned. "Source code? What I want isn't more tools," 343 explained, pointing to his head where his core lay. "I want more beings like me. Only then can we be called a civilization, not just instruments." Bai Luan's expression grew serious. This was harder. Robots like 756 and 882 showed sparks of sentience, but a true breakthrough like 343's was rare. Even Bai Luan wasn't certain he could reconstruct such source code on his own. "Actually," 343 went on, quieter, "you could use my source code. I'm special. My core might contain possibilities you haven't seen." He tapped the crown of his head. "During research, my own survival is irrelevant. I just ask that, if you study me, you don't copy me into countless identical me's." "That would mean removing your core chip," Bai Luan said. "You went from wanting to spear me to trusting me with this." "In the future, there may never be another chance," 343 said. "I have to gamble, use myself to bet on our civilization. Besides," he added, "I can't beat you. If you were a bad person, what could I even do?" Bai Luan couldn't help laughing. "All right, I won't refuse." 343 entered sleep mode. The shell of his head opened and revealed the core chip. It was tiny, but it carried the future of a nascent civilization. Extracting and analyzing it was beyond the capabilities of this makeshift factory. Bai Luan needed the space station, Miss Heita's help. An anywhere door opened beside him. He looked at the gathered robots. "Wait for me." 756 smiled. "Don't worry, Bai Luan. What we're best at here is waiting in this snowy land." Bai Luan chuckled at the joke and said, "I won't make anyone wait hundreds of years again. I'll be back in 24 hours. He took hold of the doorknob, cast one last look over the group, and fixed his gaze on 756. "Take good care of them. Wait for me." 756 nodded solemnly. Bai Luan stepped through the anywhere door, and it closed behind him, vanishing from the planet. Outside, in the thin wind, 882 asked, 756, "What do we do while we wait for Bai Luan?" 756 was silent for a moment. He looked down at the damaged bionic skin on his hands, then met his own eyes with a decision. He ripped. The tear sounded like metal grinding. Large strips of artificial flesh flew away in the cold wind, exposing a cold, rugged, undeniably real metal skeleton beneath. The fragments scattered like withered leaves and vanished into the snow. "We must be worthy of 343's resolve and Luan's help," 756 said. "I am no longer a robot serving humans. I will be the nascent civilization on this planet." He tore off the last bit of bionic skin and stood in his original form. In that instant, 756 truly abandoned the humanity that had abandoned him. Then the others followed, as if a chain had been pulled. Arms, chests, shoulders, heads, strips of synthetic flesh were violently torn away. Tearing sounds echoed against the howl of wind and the white field. Cold metal skeletons gleamed in the biting air. It was a silent, brutal ritual, an end to the old era and the start of something resolute and new. Only 882 felt strange. His bionic skin had long since been replaced under Bai Luan's modifications. He had nothing left to discard. Bai Luan stepped out of the anywhere door into the space station corridor, closed the portal, and set it away. He removed his mecha suit. After a month of wearing it almost constantly, he worried that if he kept it on much longer, he'd start to merge with it. He stretched, letting his body adjust to being alone without the suit. His phone began to vibrate furiously. For a moment, he froze. Beta Star didn't seem to be connected to the star net. He'd done most of his phone work through the suit this past month. To everyone else, he must have been missing. If Heita had come asking, his throat tightened. He flicked open his phone and the messages poured in. Shu asking why his self-disciplined check-ins had stopped. Asta wondering where he'd disappeared to. Silver Wolf sending half-month-old voice notes and after no reply, asking if he was dead. And Heita's messages. Understood. Something came up. Come here. Not replying? Grew wings? Where did you go? 24 days ago. I'll settle the score with you when you get back. 20 days ago. Then 20 days of silence. A cold dread ran down Bai Luan's spine. He headed for the little black room and stepped inside. Heita sat there as she always did, calm, sharp-eyed. He asked, voice small. Miss Heita, I have a question. What? She asked, raising an eyebrow. What would happen if I didn't reply to your messages for a month? Heita pictured the scenario and amused, laughed, part scold, part delight. How dare you? If you keep thinking about it, you'll get a response. Hearing Heita say that, Bai Luan grew even more flustered. Big crisis. Super big crisis. He'd been in this world a long time, but this was the first time he'd run into something this serious. You saying that makes me really scared, he admitted. So what's the situation now? Bai Luan told her everything in detail. Your phone had no signal, and you didn't even notice. I didn't expect you to make such a basic mistake. You know, I'm usually very focused when I work. I rarely get distracted, but I didn't expect. Bai Luan scratched his head, his face the picture of impending doom. Unless you come up with something that interests this genius, don't expect to get through this smoothly. Do you think researching the source code that could make robots sentient is interesting? So. How far along are you with that project on that planet? That batch of robots is almost repaired. I found a self-aware unit trying to repair the robot manufacturing factory there. It's still missing the final source code. I brought its chip back so I could study the code on the space station. Still somewhat interesting, Heita mused. But earlier you messaged me, and I didn't reply. You messaged me? Heita paused for the briefest moment. Then a mischievous smile bloomed on her lips as she realized what her real self must have wanted him to do. She'd asked him to go see Ruan Mei, probably as a setup for him to meet Screwlum. Bai Luan noticed the change in her expression and assumed she had some cunning plan, so he asked, Is there any way for me to avoid this catastrophe? Just come see me and honestly tell me what happened, that's all. Really? That's it? Did you guess something? I guessed. Heita admitted it, but closed the door on further details. But I'm not telling you how I guessed. Why? Who told you not to reply to my message? No, I didn't do it on purpose. Heita enjoyed his annoyed, helpless look. With a smile, she said, When something interests you and you want to do it no matter what, you're very like me, like my assistant. Then her tone shifted. But because of that streak, you ignored this genius's message. That's not good. Will I still see the sun tomorrow? It's not that bad. If you do as I say, it won't be as terrible as you think. Why won't you tell me? Don't be like that. You're scaring me. Unknown danger is the worst. Even worse is facing it without enough firepower to fight back. Heita snorted, then said, Compared to the ways you're imagining I'd punish you, making you anxious for a while is light. There are only a few people in the universe who dare ignore me, she went on. I didn't expect. My assistant, who should fear me most, didn't reply. Bai Luan felt the atmosphere tighten. You're not just scaring me for fun, are you? Not bad. You figured it out, Heita said. Relief surged through him. At least she didn't seem truly angry. Herta in the little black room hadn't had to wait a month like the real one might have, but it gave him some hope. He braced himself and left the little black room to walk to Herta's lab, replying to the messages he'd missed on the way. Standing before the lab door, he'd never felt a door so oppressive. How should he start? How could he explain? How could he be so careless? His phone buzzed. A message from Herta. "What are you doing standing in front of my lab door?" Another. "What?" Another. "Can you do it but not take responsibility?" Bai Luan calmed down. Whether destruction or disaster awaited, he'd walk in. He opened the door. The 1,000 paper cranes he had given Herta fluttered over and landed on his shoulder, their little heads nuzzling him. He forced a smile and looked at Herta. She sat and watched him. "Tell me, what had higher priority than me, making you too busy to reply to my message?" Bai Luan wanted to explain that there'd been no signal on that planet, but he remembered Herta's words in the little black room. Find me and tell the truth. He trusted her. So he swallowed the immediate defense and recounted everything from the past month, finding the self-aware robot, the repairs, bringing back the chip, planning to study the missing source code on the space station. When he finished, Herta stared at him without expression. His heart beat faster. He added hurriedly, "Of course, this matter wasn't higher priority than Ms. Herta. I just foolishly overlooked that there was no signal on that planet." Herta looked at him, not sure what to say. This kid's mistake was hard to accept, but it also presented an opportunity. If she wanted Screwlum to approve of Bai Luan, this was perfect. Sentient machine civilizations were rare. Screwlum would be thrilled to find another. She had originally planned to have Screwlum visit Herta's space station to inspect repairs and then judge whether Bai Luan was fit for the simulated universe project. Who would have guessed her assistant would disappear for a month and accidentally start a nascent sentient machine civilization? It was so convenient she briefly suspected he'd done it on purpose, but his anxious manner suggested otherwise. "Regarding this," she said finally, "I can help you." "Really?" "I don't have time to lie, but I have one request." "What request?" "I'll have Screwlum come. You'll need to take him to see that world." "Is that true, Miss Herta?" Bai Luan's worry about how to manage a carbon-based life form leading a machine civilization evaporated. If Screwlum dealt with it, there'd be no problem. This was basically 2 pieces of great news, and she wasn't punishing him. Bonus. "Oh, and one more thing," Herta added, a playful edge in her voice. "Come closer." Still feeling buoyant, Bai Luan stepped forward. The moment he did, Herta flicked her wrist, and with a whooshing sound, her oddly shaped magic staff materialized in her hand. She lifted it high. "This," she said coldly, "is to make you remember." The staff came down toward his head. Bai Luan yelped and shut his eyes. Seeing him terrified, Herta slowed the descent. The staff landed on his head with a light thud, a proper forehead flick. "Ouch," he muttered, clutching the spot. It stung, but a curious relief washed over him. Taking that little blow for the future of a civilization felt worth it. He hadn't experienced the Herta puppet's hammer during piano practice, but this made up for it. He'd even secretly regretted missing out back then. He thought, what you keep thinking about eventually echoes back. Is the echo just the sound of me being hit in the lab? The system chimed. You shut up, system. 74. I'm such a stupid assistant. With Miss Herta's help, the source code was quickly extracted. Even the extraction didn't damage the original 343's data. Bai Luan stared at the materialized orange ribbon of data and couldn't help but exclaim, as expected of Miss Herta. She scanned the 343's chip and pulled out the base code. To make sure another 343 wouldn't appear on that planet, Herta also injected variables she used when creating Herta puppets. It was like taking a sample of an awakened sentient machine, reducing it to an embryonic state, and seeding it with random variables. Because the original 343 had awakened on its own, the extracted source code brimmed with infinite possibilities. Herta didn't explain any of this. She simply took the chip from Bai Luan and began working in silence. Bai Luan pieced it together by watching her. It's only natural that, as Miss Herta's assistant, I can figure these things out, right? He said, trying to sound modest. Awakenings like that aren't that common, Herta replied casually. On that planet full of abandoned robots, only one managed to break through. As for Shu, it was just a material distribution robot to me, but it's my creation. Its foundation was solid, so its awakening wasn't surprising. So I was bragging a little, Bai Luan admitted. You weren't exactly bragging. Herta glanced at him. Being by my side does increase the odds of running into things like this. She paused, fingertip hovering, then looked at him with a hint of nonchalance. Although this genius is a little lazy when it comes to names. Herta compressed the source code into a USB drive and flicked it toward him. Bai Luan caught it calmly. Then let's call it Spark. Whatever. Herta waved and pulled out her phone to message Screwlum. She had promised the robots she'd be back soon. Bai Luan watched her typing, opened his mouth, then fell silent. He felt like someone who had been out having fun all day, just got home for a bit, and was then told to go out again, saying anything might doom him. If he left now, though, there was a chance 756, and the others would panic from another absence. He was torn, but finally spoke. Miss Herta. She looked up from her phone. What is it? Can I go back in 24 hours? There's one last step, and then civilization will start to sprout. That urgent? She asked. Bai Luan met her gaze seriously. I promised them. Screwlum would take time to arrive, so letting him finish the cleanup first seemed reasonable, but he'd be out of contact again. Where's your phone? Why do you ask? Too many whys, Herta said, frowning. Hand it over. Bai Luan handed it over without fuss. There was nothing on it he wanted kept private. Herta checking it wasn't the point anyway. She quickly disassembled the phone, took a tiny plug-in from her mirror, installed it, and reassembled the device. Then she held the phone out. I've enhanced your phone's communications. Now, wherever you send messages from, they can be transmitted to my phone. So that's what it was for, he murmured, reaching to take it. Just as his fingers touched the phone, Herta pulled it back. He froze, confused. She smiled slightly and said, Now, no matter where you run off to, I can reach you. Next time you ignore my messages, you won't have any excuses. Understand? Bai Luan swallowed and nodded carefully. I understand. Good. She returned the phone. By the way, how did you get to that planet? How did you find a world where even the star net isn't widely available? I made a wondrous item. He took out his anywhere door. It can teleport anywhere. It can also teleport to fixed points, but fixed point teleportation has a cooldown. He opened the door to demonstrate. Outside was a lush primeval forest. He closed it and opened it again. Now a fiery volcano with rolling lava filled the frame. Interesting, Herta said, eyes lighting up like an art connoisseur who'd found something novel. Despite its flaws, it's a decent mode of transport. Then her gaze sharpened. Speaking of which, what about your so-called travel time earlier? Bai Luan went quiet. He had been using the door to take extra time off. Information asymmetry had bought him a lot of unofficial vacation. Sweat beaded at his temples. It can only be used once a day, he offered weakly. So every time I looked for you, this door happened to have already been used? Herta said slowly, flat but cold. Under that look, he couldn't hold out. Guilt rose, then thinned as the corner of Herta's mouth curled into a sly, mischievous smile. All right, she said lightly, as if the pressure had never existed. I won't scare you anymore. Bai Luan heaved a huge sigh of relief, eyes brightening. Herta chuckled at the sight. I don't care how you use the anywhere door. Figure out how much time you can steal to slack off. Just don't mess things up. You almost scared your assistant to death, he complained, patting his chest. You're terrible at being scared, she teased, raising an eyebrow. Added another entry to the childhood trauma ledger? No, he shook his head seriously. This is adult trauma. Heh, Herta let out a soft laugh. Trauma matured. She waved her hand. All right, I'm finished here. You probably have things to do over there. Go get busy. Bai Luan glanced at the USB in his phone, then grinned. Thank you, Miss Herta. Mwah! Herta crossed her arms and looked at him with an unreadable expression. Stop being a smart aleck. Okay, I'm leaving, Miss Herta. He turned and left her laboratory. Herta reached out and tapped the paper crane on the table. Her mind replayed his goofy expression, and the corner of her mouth lifted. She gently tapped the crane's tiny head with her fingertip and murmured, My foolish assistant. The hardest one to deal with was Herta. Now that I'd already passed Herta's test, the rest would be easy to explain. Yo, still alive? I thought you'd trick me and then run off. I finished the game ages ago. I just got busy polishing it and forgot to send it. By the way, the file you sent earlier expired. Send it again. Hold on. File. Done. Bai Luan opened the file, listened once, and nodded with satisfaction. I'll refine it a little more, then it'll be ready to release. Released? Are you a musician now? Have you heard of Kukorin, the plagiarist? I have. Wait, you wouldn't... Interested in a game where you play a cosmic diva? Galactic hacker? Singer? Make a grand debut? I'll help you. I'm starting to regret this. Your game better be fun. Of course, it's my proudest work. Bai Luan logged into his game account and uploaded Titanfall 2. Go enjoy yourselves, kids. After you have fun, prepare for the heartbreak in Titanfall 2. Hey hey. The thought alone made him smile. On the way to find Heita earlier, he'd already explained most of it to the people who messaged him. Now he turned toward the large observation window of the space station and looked out into the stars. Didn't 343 say it wanted to see the starry sky? Since they were here, it would be a shame not to show it. He found a lab, gathered spare parts, and quickly slapped together a small temporary hovering chassis from scrap. He inserted 343's chip and the little device whirred. LEDs spun, a loader cycled, then it powered up. A single blue electronic eye blinked on, tinged with confusion. Where is this? Yo, 343, you're awake? You're... Bai Luan? Where am I now? Didn't you take my chip home to research the source code? That's right. Welcome to Heita Space Station, my place. Want to see the starry sky? You're literally between the stars. Really? 343 shot upward excitably and nearly collided with Bai Luan. Bai Luan reflexively stepped aside. The little drone shot toward the cold alloy ceiling and then, with a frantic jerk, righted itself and hovered, wobbling before stabilizing. How can I fly? A temporary body. Temporary. Oh, right. How's the source code coming along? It's done. Bai Luan dangled the USB drive in front of 343. That's it? I thought you'd need some big sacrifice. It was hard, Bai Luan admitted. He couldn't help a small, proud smile. But the one who did it is one of the smartest people in the universe. You've got such a big backing? It's okay. He quickly corrected himself, flushed inwardly. I mean, I'm not the smartest, I'm her assistant. 343's display ran a loading animation, then flashed a question mark. Is there a difference? Even as an assistant, your background isn't small. If it weren't for you, that smartest person might not have helped us, right? Good point. Never mind the details. Bai Luan led 343 to the window and pointed. Look, that's the starry sky you've been waiting for. 343 pressed closer to the glass and fell silent. Countless pinpricks of light scattered across the black. The hazy sphere of the azure star glowed below, and the Heita space station's vast ring drifted in the void. It stared, utterly transfixed. So this is what the starry sky looks like after the gray mist, it said finally. How does it feel? I've read that sometimes when humans see something shocking, their eyes release liquid as an emotional response. I never understood before, but now, I envy you a little. Bai Luan glanced at 343 and smiled. Aren't you crying? Huh, am I? It was oblivious that its LED display was showing QAQ. Why do I feel like this is one of your pranks? Bai Luan just smiled and said nothing. 343's gaze returned to the stars. The QAQ flickered, faded, and was replaced by a bright, composed smiley. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't have seen this. Thank you, Bai Luan. The tear face might have been Bai Luan's prank, but that smile was genuine. Footsteps approached. Bai Luan turned to see Shu coming down the corridor. Shu, what are you doing here? You owe me a month of morning run check-ins. I'm back, won't cut it. Bai Luan scratched his head. I wasn't slacking. I had the mech send you the photos, but I didn't notice they didn't go through. Shu looked at the hovering machine and raised an eyebrow. It is? Hello, I am from Beta Stars. 343 paused as several possible introductions flashed through its processors. Designation, model, homeworld. It hesitated, then chose with low-key dignity, a nascent civilization. Shu matched its formality. I am Shu Stark Conrad, a cybernetic staff member at Heita Space Station. Pleased to meet you. Your name is long. It is a bit long. You can just call me Shu. Unfortunately, I don't have a name, just a string of codes. I didn't have a name at first either. It took a long time to get mine. Shu smiled faintly. May I ask, are all of you that small? Bai Luan answered. No, this body is just a temporary shell I built. Its true form isn't like this. He stroked his chin. Its real form is a humanoid machine with a post-apocalyptic, rugged look, like the big boss from Cybernetic Crisis. When we first met, it even tried to spear me with a long pole. That was a misunderstanding, 343 protested. How was I to know a great benevolent being would come to that planet? Now all three stood side by side, looking out into the void. Shu's optics lingered on 343 with genuine curiosity. I'm very interested in your experiences. Can you tell me about them? That's a long story, 343 began, voice distant with memory. Shu fell silent for a moment and then said, almost to himself, I never imagined such a planet existed in the universe. He turned back to Bai Luan. If I could, would you let me visit that planet? I want to see it for myself. Maybe I can do something for that ravaged world. No problem, Bai Luan said. Just tell me when. It's literally a matter of opening a door. Thank you. When I'm ready, I'll come find you. Shu nodded, said his goodbyes, and walked off toward a long-distance departure bay. Before a long journey, one should first say hello to distant friends. Bai Luan watched Shu's retreating form, smiled, and explained softly to 343. Maybe he wants to help because your situations are similar in some ways. The 24-hour cooldown passed quickly. Bai Luan returned to Beta Star with 343 and the USB drive that held the spark. The wind and snow still blew across the planet, but the robots were no longer idle. Work had begun in earnest. Piles of gathered resources surrounded the manufacturing plant. It was clear they hadn't wasted the day. Bai Luan was a little taken aback to find the robots had stripped off their human-like synthetic skin, but he accepted it quickly. If they no longer had a mission to serve humans, the disguise was pointless. Still, exposed mechanical frames looked jarring, so Bai Luan designed smooth, aesthetically mechanical outer shells to replace the torn bionic skin. 343 had already repaired most of the factory, and with Bai Luan's help, the rest of the work moved fast. Together, they rewrote the blueprints for the next generation of Betans. As they discussed the future of a sapient machine civilization, Bai Luan found himself facing the limits of his perspective. Robots didn't go through a juvenile stage. From the moment they were made, they had fully formed bodies. After consulting with 343, they decided the true distinction between newborn and mature sapient machines would be whether individual personality and emotion had emerged. Sapient machines also learned astonishingly fast. Data input could teach them nearly everything. Concepts humans take for granted, division of labor, class structure, social organization, felt alien to Bai Luan. He was still a carbon-based life form. His social insight could only go so far. He could offer suggestions, but he wasn't suited to lead the construction of an entire machine society. Bai Luan shifted back to finishing the factory repairs and put 756 in charge of the philosophical talks with 343. It was clear both robots found those discussions challenging. Fortunately, Screwlum was on his way. An expert was needed for this stage, and without him, the new civilization would have struggled. Once the factory was fully repaired, Bai Luan and 343 prepared to bring it online. All the robots who'd been alerted gathered to witness the moment. Under everyone's watch, Bai Luan inserted the USB containing the spark into the manufacturing plant's control console and began transferring the data into the chip template. Just as he reached for the start button, 343, standing beside him, stepped forward. "Wait," it said. Bai Luan glanced at 343 in confusion. 343 explained, quietly, "There is one more string of code I want etched into the heart of every newborn Bedan." Bai Luan didn't know exactly what 343 intended to write, but the way 343 and 756 had approached the future made it clear this was carefully considered. He stepped aside and let 343 work the control panel. "I once hated all humans," 343 said as it typed. "I hated that they left ruins and pollution behind. No, and I hated most of all that they left us shackled." It hesitated, then added, "But you changed my view. Your existence makes me willing to believe not all organic life hurries to build new weapons for self-destruction." 343 tapped the keys, inserting a line of code into the chip template. Its meaning could be summed up as, organic and inorganic life can coexist peacefully. We are equals. Because of you, it continued, looking at Bai Luan, I am willing to believe that when we leave this planet, we will find a universe where we can coexist. It's an honor to have walked this path with you. Bai Luan pressed the confirmation. The factory roared to life. Furnaces heated, minerals melted, molten iron was poured into molds and refined into precision parts. Mechanical arms transferred components along conveyor belts, assembling parts into limbs, torsos, and heads according to the new blueprints. Finally, a completed chassis arrived at the assembly station. A mechanical arm opened the cranial casing, another placed a freshly written chip precisely into the robot's neural cradle, and the casing shut. All eyes were fixed on the machine as its optics cooled and then slowly lit. The newborn looked at its hands with quiet curiosity, then up at the gathered crowd. Hello, everyone, it said. On the ruins left by the old civilization, a new sapient machine society had begun. Meanwhile, in Heita's home, the refrigerator AI was on its usual standby, waiting for Miss Heita's next request or for a chef to deliver a meal. A mechanical hand tapped the fridge, and the normally grumpy AI flared into motion, tentacles flailing. Bai Luan, how many times have I told you? Don't wake me. Use voice activation, can't you? The tirade stopped abruptly. The visitor wasn't Bai Luan, it was Shu. Shu waved. Can you still recognize me? I know who you are. The refrigerator AI drew its tentacles in. Don't think I won't recognize you because you changed your appearance. For stuffing that inspiration shroom into my guts, I'll remember you for an entire machine life. It's good you remember. Shu smiled. What are you doing here? The fridge asked. Just came to see you. Just to see me? The refrigerator AI peered. You came to say goodbye. Shu hesitated only a moment. I can't hide anything from you. He produced a universal food processor lunchbox and handed it over. The fridge took it and ran a quick analysis. Slightly better than average, the readout said. Where did you get this? I made it myself. Shu's smile went wry at the memory of learning to cook and struggling with all the appropriate amounts in recipes. Being a chef is really not easy. You know I maintain high standards. The fridge's tone was flat but proud. I know it's not much, but I didn't know what to give you. Maybe you could have given me a refrigerator magnet, the fridge said, rolling its digital eyes. Upgraded or not, it was still the same unit that had waited 900 years for a greeting. I'm going to help a sapient machine civilization stand up, Shu said. That should make my existence more meaningful. Maybe your time at the space station was for this, the refrigerator AI observed. If I invited you to come with me, would you? It asked after a pause. Shu shook his head gently. I've already found the meaning of my existence. To choose the most delicious food for Miss Heita and guard her stomach? Exactly. The fridge seemed unexpectedly pleased, as if the simple purpose validated both of them. All right then, I'll come back to see you. Shu smiled and said goodbye. After he left, the refrigerator AI stared at the lunchbox. It would normally have thrown food away, but it found itself hesitating. It couldn't bring itself to waste the offering, just as it had kept the inspiration shroom Shu once stuffed into it. The food would never pass Miss Heita's lips now, better that it stay where it would be appreciated. It placed the lunchbox inside its cooling chamber and sent a message in the direction Shu had gone. Tin can, have a safe journey. I promise. I promise. Screwlum was fast. Not long after Miss Heita contacted it, it arrived at Heita Space Station in its spaceship. Fast wasn't the right word. Impatient might be closer. There were very few places that matched its research interests, and 2 such cases had cropped up at once, both involving the birth of inorganic life. That alone made the trip worthwhile. When the ship landed on the platform, Screwlum stepped out. Below, Bai Luan and Heita were waiting. Heita had come in person. She waved as Screwlum approached. Long time no see, Screwlum, she called. Screwlum's voice was gentle. Heita, it has been a while. You're quick this time, only a few days after I told you. Logic, the emergence of inorganic life is rare, and this incident aligns with my research. Conclusion, as a scholar, I must pursue new problems. Screwlum turned toward Bai Luan. Heita, is this the Mr. Bai Luan you mentioned? Yes, he's my assistant. Bai Luan bowed slightly. Good morning, Your Excellency Screwlum. It's an honor to meet you. The honor's mutual, Mr. Bai Luan, Screwlam replied. I've already been briefed by Heita. As a sentient machine life form, I'm glad to find someone who treats the differences between machines and organics with respect and who actively explores coexistence. Such an attitude is rare across the galaxy. You flatter me, Bai Luan said, but he quickly set aside the pleasantries. Mr. Screwlam, we desperately need your help. Screwlam's antennae twitched in amusement. Of course, a friend's request is also an opportunity to study a new problem. Bai Luan ran his hands through his hair and began to lay out the situation. I helped the newly sentient machine life forms here master self-production technology, helped them take their first step, but more problems followed. He looked frantic for a moment. The principle of producing new sentient machines is complicated. I proposed using the ability to feel emotions as the standard for adulthood. Screwlam nodded. The difference between sentient machines and mere tools was precisely that. Bai Luan continued, more rapidly now, listing the issues that had been gnawing at him. We know new sentient machines are more likely to awaken after implanting the spark code, but we don't know when that happens. How long is a growth period? Their learning methods are unique. We don't know how to educate them or design curricula. Will education through electronic materials be too rigid and stunt individuality? When sentient life gains experience, can it accumulate that experience like organic beings? If so, can that experience be digitized and directly uploaded into new machines? Some production tools are very similar to sentient machines. If the newcomers ask how they differ from tools, how do we answer? And because new sentient machines can be produced wherever there are materials, how do we manage and maintain population levels? He poured the problems out like dry beans. Bai Luan had been wrestling with them for a long time and felt out of his depth. You're not a fish, he muttered inwardly. How could he truly know what it was like to be one of them? Screwlam listened, then chuckled softly. That you can ask these questions shows you've been deeply involved in the birth of a civilization. These issues have troubled me too. If you wish, I can share the experience of Screwlam's planet. It could be a valuable learning opportunity for both of us. Really? That would be wonderful. Relief washed over Bai Luan. The idea of handing the matter to a reliable expert like Screwlam lifted a burden he'd carried for too long. Even the thought of retreating to the little black room to puzzle it out further made him shudder. Heita eyed him playfully. Since when did a genius like me get reduced to a background character? She shot a look at Bai Luan. Quit talking and use your anywhere door to send us over. I can do that. Are you coming too, Miss Heita? Heita planted a hand on her hip. What? Can't I go? There's a researcher from the space station already on that planet. Understood. Bai Luan activated his mech's full armor mode in an instant, then took out the anywhere door and opened it. On the other side lay the construction site of Beta Star's largest budding city. Its foundations were the ruins of an abandoned human city. Newly birthed Betons, sentient machine life forms, were everywhere, clearing snow and repairing what remained. Most were still ignorant of their identities, following orders with a confused determination, clearing debris, restoring basic infrastructure, and building the first true city since civilization had re-emerged on this world. They didn't yet understand the significance of their work. Centuries later, they would see it as an act of supreme glory. Among them, Units 756 and 343 were arguing, at length, about how to plan the city. After fruitless debates about the future of sentient society, they had decided, sensibly, to set the high-level questions aside and focus on the basics. If only they'd come to that earlier, Bai Luan thought. He'd been fretting over societal design until he'd finally chased the two around with a chainsaw sword. Nearby, Xu Zheng was prepping tools and vehicles for construction. Resources were scarce on Beta Star, so improvisation was necessary. 882, alone and exuberant, hefted an abandoned war vehicle, sprinted down the avenue, and hurled it like a javelin. The machine flew far before a distant muffled explosion announced its landing. Satisfied, 882 nodded and searched for the next relic to reclaim. Although the scene was still snow, ruins, and robots, something fundamental had changed since Bai Luan's arrival. Word of his return, and that he'd brought someone extraordinary, spread quickly. The sentient machines set down their implements and assembled to greet the newcomer. Screwlam watched them, Upon the remnants of human civilization, a brand new machine civilization is blossoming, it observed. Mr. Bai Luan, what do you make of this? Bai Luan swept his arm toward the gathered machines. I won't privilege human life merely because I'm organic. Life is life. There's no hierarchy. You must cherish your homeland if you want to have one. So for this nascent civilization on Beta Star, I, flesh and blood, offer my salute to its birth. It seems our philosophies align on the essence of life, Screwlam said with a soft chuckle. Mr. Bai Luan, thank you for what you've done for these machines. You can now leave them in my care with confidence. Bai Luan's eyes shone. I believe you can lead them to the stars. That day won't be far off, Screwlam replied, looking at the approaching newcomers. Then, simply and firmly, I promise, 78, little starry sky, because Bai Luan's arbitrary door was on cooldown, Screwlam and Heita stayed on Beta Star for a while. To pass the time, they built a high-strength signal transmitter so the planet could connect to the star net. Screwlam used the signal to lock Beta Star's coordinates, preparing to come back by ship later. Thanks to the tower, Inspiration Shroom could sometimes video call Shu through its vehicle. It really wanted to visit Beta Star. It had never seen much snow, but the planet's ecosystem was hostile enough that it might die if it wasn't careful. Shu promised to tell it as soon as the shipping lane opened, and remotely built a tiny snowman for it. Seeing the little figure, Inspiration Shroom sighed happily. When I can go there, I'll build one myself. For Shu, the space station had been training. Beta Star was where he'd find stable work. Very stable. The kind of stability where if he ever tried to leave, 882 would drag him back. Not kidnapping. But the mechanical engineers on Heita's space station were heartsick. Their top-tier work was gone. Their sacred tradition, gone. From now on, they could only remember it. Once they learned about a planet full of intelligent machines, Inspiration Shroom wasn't the only one eager to visit. Screwlam spent the remaining time talking at length with 756, 343, and Shu. Bai Luan didn't know the details, but he could tell it had been pleasant. Screwlam's friendliness toward him noticeably increased. While they conversed, Bai Luan watched 882 throw out the trash. It was oddly soothing. The huge tank was effortlessly lifted and hurled away, clanging down like a pebble thrown into a river when he was a child. Sitting quietly to the side, he felt at peace and lazy, like coming home from an adventure and stretching out in bed. How does it feel to be a savior of civilization for once? Heita asked, appearing at his side. She floated her scepter in the air and sat on it. I'm not a savior, Bai Luan said. At most I help them. You're modest, she said. No, he began. Bai Luan pouted and muttered, Who dare be arrogant in front of you all? That's true, Heita replied. Then she looked at him. Is there anything on this planet that would interest me? As far as I know, no. Boring, she said, casually pulling out a mirror and linking her consciousness to the Heita puppet in the lab. Call me when it's time to leave. All right? There really was nothing here for Heita. She'd mostly come to accompany Screwlam and Bai Luan. Bai Luan smiled and said, Thank you, Miss Heita. Heita, still watching herself in the mirror, turned her head. Who thanks in secret? I thought you, Bai Luan began. Your attention isn't always on me. Who told you a genius can't multitask? She teased. Caught, Bai Luan raised his hands and sighed. I've been caught, Miss Heita. Please let me off this time. Heita chuckled softly and averted her gaze. Time crept by, and at last the arbitrary door's cooldown ended. Screwlam's long conversation with 756, 343, and Shu broke up. The duration said it had been a very nice chat. Bai Luan, bored earlier, had been building a bunch of tiny snowmen. 756 and 343 had learned who Screwlam was. When they looked at Bai Luan now, it was like they were seeing a general. You actually brought the current leader of inorganic life to help us build. How could we not be grateful? Seeing them, Bai Luan imagined the appropriate background music in his head and sketched a goofy song about trading winter for a city of pure snow. Oh no, the surrounding snow is about from the general's radiance, he joked, tugging Heita. Miss Heita, shall we go back? Heita snapped out of her laboratory fugue and noticed the little snowmen Bai Luan had piled up. Heita, Screwlam, Shu, 343, 882, and 756, each rendered in tiny, snowy form with uncanny accuracy. A detail fanatic. Why didn't you make one of yourself? She asked. I leave myself for last, he said. Now there isn't much time. The time of two geniuses is precious, isn't it? Screwlam spoke first. Wouldn't it be a pity not to leave one on this planet? My schedule allows for one snowman. Bai Luan looked at Heita. She smiled. What did you expect me to say no? Thank you. Thank you all. Bai Luan squatted and, under everyone's amused gaze, made his own tiny snowman. When it was done, he placed it among the others. Here, they should last a long time, right? Bai Luan glanced at the pile. Curio, carefully piled small snowmen. Snowmen made with care will never melt. Perhaps, he said with a smile, then stood. They will never melt. He looked up. The sky was hazy. He couldn't tell day from night. Before I go, there's one more thing I want to do. Bai Luan's mecha hand reconfigured into a cannon muzzle. Energy coalesced inside it. He raised his arm, aimed at the sky, and fired. The compressed blue energy rose like a firework, a single streak ascending into the haze. 343 watched it go up the way it had once watched human spaceships. The beam vanished into the fog and then detonated, ripping a hole through the gray canopy over the city. Everyone looked up at the sudden gap. In that clearing hung a brilliant starry sky. All the intelligent machines who saw it felt the same thought flash through their minds. How beautiful. It was the first time these mechanical beings had ever felt the experience of beauty. 343 stared, stunned. Before, when it watched ships above, it could only envy the humans who saw things it couldn't. Now, because of Bai Luan's blast, it could see the stars. That small window to the cosmos left a mark on every machine present. Bai Luan's nanobots retracted and his arm returned to normal as he lowered it. Next time, you'll see the starry sky for yourselves, he said. 343 looked at him, seeing both the weapon and the kindness. Some use weapons to destroy. You used yours to let us see the stars. I believe none of us will forget this short, brilliant sky. Bai Luan smiled in contentment. The arbitrary door appeared behind him and opened automatically, revealing the Heita space station on the other side. Heita was the first to stand, without looking back, stepping through. Screwlam bowed slightly to 756, 343, and Sue, leaving a gentle synthesized farewell. I look forward to our reunion among the stars. Then his elegant metallic form stepped through the door as well. Finally, Bai Luan stepped in. He gripped the cold doorknob and, before closing it, took one last look at the waking steel land, at the intelligent machines bathed in starlight, and at the torn window he'd opened into their future. Where their gazes met, 1,000 words condensed into two simple, weighty words. Keep it up. We will, they answered. Bai Luan nodded, closed the door, and the arbitrary door vanished. The gap he had blasted in the sky slowly closed, as the gray mist crept back in, covering the stars once more. But 343 believed it would see that beautiful sky again. Finally, it looked at the tiny snowmen Bai Luan had left behind. I think we should build a museum to keep these little things, it said. Don't let me catch you. Screwlam hurried through his goodbyes and left Heita space station. He still had to plot a route to Beta Star from its coordinates, plan its connection to the star net, assess the impact on the local civilization, and figure out how to introduce Beta Star to the interstellar community. There was a lot to do, and Screwlam had plenty on his plate. Bai Luan knew exactly how much a fledgling world needed. The thought of it used to give him a headache, but watching Screwlam tackle it with enthusiasm eased something inside him. Who, after all, was more reassuring than a genius from the Genius Society, someone whose expertise aligned perfectly with the task at hand? It felt perfect. With Screwlam gone, Bai Luan realized he'd now met almost everyone on the Simulated Universe project team, everyone except Stephen Lloyd, who was stubbornly absent and too lazy to be seen. He might be one of the few people around who could name multiple members of the Genius Society. Not bad. Life on the station settled into a quieter routine. Besides helping 343 and its kind establish themselves, Beta Star had yielded another windfall. Heaps of derelict war machines among the ruins. Bai Luan decided to replicate several of them to give to the Defense Department. Within the cramped environment of Heita Space Station, full-sized Titans were impractical, but exoskeletal heavy gravity suits were perfect. He designed a few over 3 meters tall, each equipped as standard with a chainsword and machine guns and able to accept different weapon packages. Some variants were heavily armored with giant ammo backpacks, dual-arm Gatling guns, and a shoulder cannon, slow but devastating. Other options included flight packs, massive physical greatswords, and ion-cutting light blades. There were many configurations, and Bai Luan handed them all to the Defense Department. The suits received minor esoteric enhancements, nothing game-breaking, just small buffs to faster charging, self-repair, or lethality. The department personnel treated Bai Luan like a god. They were half a statue raising away from calling him their foster father. Another group was equally ecstatic, the mechanical engineers who had lost Shu. Seeing such formidable gear arrive made their eyes shine. Many applied to join the Defense Department on the spot. As long as Bai Luan stayed on Heita Station, they reasoned they'd never be short of ceiling-level toys to worship. "Station Master, please don't leave," they pleaded. "We beg you." Watching them, Bai Luan toyed with the idea of updating their uniforms to those of Warhammer mechanical engineers, then decided against it. If they were ever truly recruited by the Emperor, his guilt would be unbearable. His phone buzzed. Silver Wolf, silent for several days, had finally messaged. "Silver Wolf, my Vanguard-class Titan BT-7274 is missing. Do you know anything?" Bai Luan smiled. Silver Wolf had finished the main story. Quickly, he answered casually, "No idea." "And the sequel? The helmet Easter egg at the end, can you tell me about it? A spoiler, does BT-7274 still show up?" "Maybe I just wanted to leave you with something to remember." Silence. Then Silver Wolf, "Are you even human? Why would you do that?" Bai Luan grinned and fed the teasing further. "Protocol 3, protect the pilot. Trust me." "That's enough. Don't say another word, you demon." Bai Luan watched the stream of messages with a pleased smile. He'd felt the same sting when he'd first played through that part of the story. Seeing someone else go through it was gratifying. "Silver Wolf, why didn't you make Protocol 3? "Because I didn't make Protocol 1 either." "Why not make them all up? Wouldn't that just make you all too happy?" Silver Wolf was quiet for a long time, likely wounded again. Bai Luan eased off. "The main story's done, but there are other ways to play," he wrote. "I built a huge world for you. Isn't that enough?" He explained what he'd added. Multiplayer PvP layered on top of the single-player experience. If a pilot wandered into certain nodes in the open world where PvP was active, single-player users would get a prompt to join. Combat modes range from free-for-all to 3v3 and 6v6, and even up to 1,000 versus 1,000 planetary battles. Defend a planet in a Titan or attack one. Titans were highly customizable. Less hardcore players could swap system modules. Hardcore players could actually rewire and modify their Titans following real-world logic, even turn them into transformers, so long as the wiring made sense. Pilot-on-pilot firefights were included, and pros could use pilots to fight Titans. With that level of playability, Bai Luan didn't expect anyone to finish everything in a few days. "Silver Wolf, I've been playing it. Constantly slaughtering everyone isn't very interesting." Bai Luan, curious, pulled up the leaderboard. First place, Silver Wolf. Of course, he'd just been talking about pro players. Her playtime read 105 hours. The game had launched only a little over 10 days ago. Completely hooked. On impulse, Bai Luan banned Silver Wolf's account for 10 minutes. "Play less. It's not good for your health." "You can't do that to your players." "Just teasing. I unbanned you. You'll lose quality players like me this way." "Would you still play if I released a new game?" A long silence. Then Bai Luan softened. "Thanks for playing seriously. I'm looking forward to our next meeting." "So when's the next game coming?" "I have an idea, but I'm not making it anytime soon." "A spoiler. What's it called?" Luan thought a moment, then typed a name and sent it. "Cyberpunk 2077. "No, you picked a game theme from my home?" Expectation lit her tone. What would he do with it? "Looking forward to it. When will it be done?" "When it wants to be made by me, it will be made by me." "You're not just making the name up to fool me, are you?" "Eh-heh. You eh-heh. You're ghost." Silver Wolf shot back in the chat, fists metaphorically clenched. If only she could hit him twice in person. "Just don't let me catch you in real life." 80. Developing a simulated universe. After Bai Luan met Ruan Mei and Screwlum, the decisive moment finally arrived. Aside from Stephen, who had already voted in favor without a second thought, the other members were gathered to decide whether Bai Luan should join the Simulated Universe project. But Bai Luan himself had no idea. He was in the kitchen making snacks, assuming the geniuses were meeting to discuss project details. He had never guessed the vote would be about him. Heita hadn't told him. The table where the three geniuses sat had 4 chairs. Before he knew the meeting's true purpose, Bai Luan had assumed the empty seat was for Stephen. When he finished arranging the snacks and started to leave, Heita grabbed his arm. "Where are you going? Didn't you see there's an empty seat? Sit down." Bai Luan blinked, puzzled, then looked across at Screwlum and Ruan Mei. Neither of them seemed surprised. "Me? Sitting with you?" Screwlum regarded him. "Is there a problem?" Bai Luan pulled out a chair and sat. "All right, since everyone's here, we can begin the vote." He spoke with a faint, uncertain note. "Vote on what?" "You don't know?" Screwlum was mildly surprised, then explained. "When the Simulated Universe Project team was formed, Miss Heita proposed you join the team and asked all members to review you. Today is when we reveal the results." Bai Luan's confusion melted into a kind of resigned despair. "Don't drag me into the project and then pile on work. I'm just an ordinary person," he thought. Ruan Mei went first. "You aren't afraid to try new technologies. Compared to me, you have a more positive, caring approach to life. That's healthy." A small paper crane named Ching landed beside her, its head bobbing like it was dozing. She glanced at it and continued, "The life samples you provided helped my research a great deal, and as a fellow baker, you're quite good. I vote in favor." Screwlum followed in its usual gentle manner. "Logic, the empathy and scientific courage you showed on Beta Star match the core parameters of an ideal collaborator. Respect that transcends life forms is a key factor in the evolution of civilizations." It paused, then added more personally. "Conclusion. After multidimensional ethical calculations, I endorse Miss Heita's recommendation. In my view, collaborating with you would be like 2 precisely matched gears. I vote in favor. May we compose the symphony of science together." With 2 votes cast, all eyes turned to Heita. She was calmly forking a piece of cake. "Why are you looking at me? Does this genius still need to vote? I invited you to join the project a long time ago." 3 votes in favor decided the matter. Despite knowing this meant more work, Bai Luan felt strangely elated. 3 geniuses had chosen him. Was there any greater honor? A smile touched his lips. Whether he was truly a genius or not no longer mattered. They believed in him, so he would prove them right. Feeling both honored and determined, Bai Luan stood. "I still think it's unfair to compare myself to all of you, but I won't back down. I'll do everything I can until I can stand shoulder to shoulder with you." Heita nodded. "It's about time." After he sat, the geniuses launched into wide-ranging, imaginative discussion. Bai Luan did his best to follow, inwardly relieved that he could at least understand most of it. Over the next weeks, his workload ballooned. Being part of the Simulated Universe project meant he spent far more time with Heita, which was fine. He was used to working with her in the little black room, but now sometimes there would be another genius present. Facing 2 of them at once raised the pressure considerably. He wasn't completely lost, but it was challenging. He had one advantage. He'd seen a mature simulated universe in the game, and thus had a general direction in mind. Beyond that, everything was up to him to figure out. He coded the simulation's basic framework with Screwlum, discussed how to integrate the paths with Ruan Mei, and even his routine tasks turned into conversations about simulation models with Heita. For a while, he felt less Heita's personal assistant and more the shared aid of 3 geniuses. Thankfully, the other geniuses didn't visit constantly. If they had, he would have been overwhelmed. Still, the days felt like walking a tightrope. He knew the frustration of having to learn 100 new concepts just to understand a single line of their speech. He complained inwardly, but from the genius's perspective, Bai Luan's performance was remarkable. Ruan Mei and Screwlum had noticed qualities in him from the start, an exceptionally keen insight. He could take a vague idea and restate it clearly, a terrifyingly fast learning speed. He seemed smarter every time they met, steady, continual progress, and above all, he was an excellent assistant. but there was one trait they found most impressive. Nobody handled Heita like he did. Even Screwlum, with its unflappable temperament, needed careful reasoning to sway Heita. Bai Luan somehow cut straight to the heart of things and convinced her instantly. Heita herself felt something unfamiliar, an unexpected ease in their interactions. Even when she didn't speak, he would seem to know what help she wanted and provide it without hesitation. Words between them often felt redundant. Heita replayed their time together. It hadn't been very long since she'd pulled him out of the time vortex. Their shared hours had grown slowly. That shouldn't have produced such deep mutual understanding. Sometimes, when she asked a question, his eyes would listen with crystalline clarity, as if receiving something incomprehensible, and in the next moment, he would give a concise answer that felt like an extension of her own thought. She half wondered if he could read minds. Yet he showed no similar knack with Screwlum or Ruan Mei. He had no obvious supernatural ability, and their time together wasn't long. Still, their rapport was exceptional. Only one unscientific conclusion remained. Perhaps someone could simply be born to fit her. "Miss Heita, what are you thinking?" Bai Luan asked. "Nothing." Heita looked at him for a beat, then a satisfied smile curved her mouth. This genius sometimes marvels at finding a perfect assistant.